back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler here with Johnny and Stefan. What's going on, guys?
Hi.
Whoa, who's that?
I know.
We can't do this every time Stefan shows up.
I know. It's not that infrequent.
I know.
Yeah.
It was weird. I wanted to tell the listeners, we actually talk over Stefan so frequently. He's been on every episode. We just talked over him the whole time, so you didn't hear him. He's been here, though.
All right. Well, do you want to hear a cool story of something that happened to me yesterday? Since you're going to talk over me the rest of the episode, might as well get it out now.
Yeah, do it.
So I've recently decided that I don't see my friends enough. So I'm including you, Johnny. So I'm going to try to make a concerted effort to see my friends. And one of those friends is my best friend, Jeremy. And I hadn't seen him in a couple years face to face. And Jeremy's house was the place when we were kids that we would do LAN parties, as early as StarCraft LAN parties and stuff like that. So, and he, I didn't realize how big of a stockpile of the old community machines, our computers that we were bringing over, that we just junked at Jeremy's and this weird land of time forgot for PCs. And so I was over there last night and I found one of my old XP machines. So I was well, that's kind of cool. So now I wanted to build an XP machine anyway, just cause. But now not only am I going to be able to build an XP machine, I'm going to be able to rebuild my XP machine from when I was a kid, because it was still at Jeremy's.
Nice. Thanks, Jeremy, and past Stefan, you did it.
Yeah.
That sounds cool, but also my budget back when Windows XP was a thing was not nearly as much as I wanted it to be. And I would love to go back and just build the computer I wanted when I was 14 years old. I think that would be so much fun, because I was tracking all the hardware in the magazines and stuff. And I just know for whatever reason, the CPU I thought was the coolest was an AMD FX60. I don't remember if it was one of the earliest dual core or quad core CPUs. I just knew that it ran Crysis like a motherfucker. And it'd probably be useless now, but I bet it's $100 for me to go get one.
Johnny, Tyler was in high school when Crysis came out.
I know, that's
was I? I might have been my first year of college, but yeah. Yeah, guys, I'm 33. I don't know, that's not that young anymore, is it?
No, but it's still 10 years younger than I am.
Yeah, we still constantly get older than you are.
It's crazy
we stay older than you
are. I told you, it's especially weird for me because in my friend group, going through high school, I was always the baby. I was the youngest. So always being the oldest now is a weird flip for me. I'm because I changed friend groups as I grew up. I still have a couple of those friends, but most of my friends are now a couple of years younger or 10 years younger now. And so it's oh, weird. I'm the old one now. Huh.
I had a weird paradigm shift with college because I tested out of high school when I was 16. And then I went directly into college and got my associates really, really young. So I was absolutely by far the youngest kid in my classes. And then I went to the game industry forever, and I always said, okay, well, if my degree ever got in my way, basically, or my lack of degree ever got in my way from my upward mobility, then I would go back for my degree. And so that didn't happen until the housing crisis of 2008. So then I was getting my bachelor's degree, and I was by far the oldest person in my classes, and it was just a very strange paradigm shift.
I went to school with someone who was 14 years old to college, and he was really obviously socially maladjusted, being 4 years younger than everyone else. And that really explains a lot about Stefan, I think.
Well, thank you.
Guys, you want to get into the episode?
Sure. I guess we should.
All right, yeah. Coming at you live from the power of clickable titles, we are going to be ranking just what we think in general might be the 7 most collectible consoles off the top of our head.
Yeah, but to be clear, we didn't do a ranking of all the consoles and say these are the 7 most. We made a ranking system and criteria, and we said, okay, we think these are the 7 most collectible. Let's put them through the sausage maker of our criteria and see what comes out on top out of these 7.
Yes, so through the power of clickable titles and dubious statistics, We've got a
Absolutely.
big old spreadsheet of how we rated each of these consoles on a bunch of different criteria. Johnny,
Yeah,
do you want to explain our great spreadsheet we have here?
Sure. So, yeah, the great spreadsheet that you guys can't see, let me explain it real quick. Anyways, we have a couple of things in which we're ranking on. I'll tell you the consoles in a minute. We're at game quality, but it's not like, oh, is it well made? Does the case hold up? No, we're talking about the quality of like playability and fun. Kind of that is a factor here. So how good on average are the games for this system, including what is the ratio of like perhaps shovelware in that? Game variety, we are looking at a couple different criteria in this one as well. But genres and innovation, does the library have many types of games? Is it all just shmups or is it all just fighters? Like, think of Neo Geo as a system that is very narrow. How many genres are available? Does it have many iterative franchises? Meaning, are there a lot of games on the system, but is there 40 Call of Duties and 40 Maddens? And like, does that total get inflated by just sports titles for 15 years? Look at PS2 and all their sports titles, padding out the library. It doesn't have a lot of that stuff to the quality of the library. Diversity of the library, that kind of sums up what that was all about. And then does it have a lot of third-party support or none? So if you think about the Wii U is a system that looks like it has third-party support, but not really. All the best titles are just from Nintendo. Third-party didn't really know how to make for it. So while it even had third-party, it like barely counts. So that's some of the factoring we did. Iconic titles. So this is a new category. And this is how many titles. Like, does it have major mascot titles? Does it have a Mario or a Sonic like that? Major licenses. So beyond just mascots, like how many major licenses did this system produce or carry through? And does it have many exclusives? Think of like the PS3 was a house for a lot of like really high quality exclusives. And so like that. Value proposition is our next one. And on this, we mean like the value of your money if you buy a game. Like if you buy Stadium Events right now, probably going to hold its value. It may not increase a bunch, but you could probably get the same money out. So
man, you are all right. I know you're going over. I mean, I would debate you on that 100%, but okay, keep going.
Why interject that right there?
You bring up your example as Stadium Events as a title that's guaranteed like stability.
It has never dipped, really, right?
Nothing has ever dipped besides the games we talked about last episode.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if you put your money into it, there's also long-term value and then potential to grow. These are the factors we're considering. Like, I wouldn't say an Atari game is as safe. Like, the booming Spider-Man business, like, do you think you should go buy that right now? Do you think you should go buy a Spider-Man at its highs or did it recess?
The Spider-Man
Over Stadium
dip,
Events, 100% buy Spider-Man.
Buy the Spider-Man
The fundamental aspects of the game matter so much more than Stadium Events.
But we're talking about the value proposition here.
Yes. Long term, in 50 years, Spider-Man and Atari 2600 is going to be worth 100 times what Stadium Events is.
You think?
Quote me on it. I'll be on my deathbed. I don't care. Come back to me with that quote.
Okay, so... Okay, asshole Tyler, you're like totally just derailing this, but sure. Put in your example then, and then use that using the same criteria. I was just throwing out a safe title that is expensive to be like, oh, if you bought this, like you're probably getting your money out of it, so you're not as worried. I would say, and people aren't game collectors for 50 or 100 years. They're like, on average, the game collector lifespan is what, like 5 years before people burn out or move on, and who knows, like with the new like investor crop that's in, like you have to think about the average lifespan of a collector in that hobby.
Johnny,
right? Yeah.
I know that I told you that the reason why I'm not on the show anymore is because of my schedule. It's not. It's Tyler.
Oh, that's really fair. Yeah. Totally fair. Anyways, value proposition. You put your money into it, can you get it out later? Long-term value and potential to grow. Cost of collecting. So this is different than value. This is how much are games like average games? Are they very expensive? Does the system have any set killers? What is the cost if you tried to get the whole library, if you were an insane person and we're doing sets? But also consider that doesn't necessarily mean shovelware. The average cost per game if you were going to collect just those games. The library if you're collecting the set, but if you're like, oh, I want to buy some PS2 titles and get a curated system, are the average cost of the good games, the games that people actually want to buy, very expensive? Or are they like, hey, Ratchet and Clank is something everybody wants, and that's still like $10. So awesome. So, it's pretty cheap to get it. And expensive here, if it's more expensive, we're giving it a 1. Our scale is 1 through 7. So expensive is 1, bad. 7 is good, cheap. Extendability. What can you do beyond just buying the basic games in the system? Can you complete a set? Is our unlicensed stuff? Homebrew, aftermarket. Can you expand beyond your region? That's kind of what we're looking at. Is there cool consoles? Is there whatever extra that where you're like, I'm not just buying the games, I can also branch out to new games beyond within that. And then this is a throwback category, Tilt. If you know it, you know. Tilt is kind of an all-encompassing, we don't want to call it other, but it contains some, it has a certain je ne sais quoi, yeah? A cool factor. And then other things like, how are the quality of the boxes? Does this system have any historical significance? Did the hardware have like issues through its lifespan? Were there cool special editions? Were the controllers good? All that extra stuff that just adds the meat to when you're thinking about like what makes a system cool, then this is where that all lives. And our scores, again, the range is 1 through 7, 1 being the lowest, 7 being the highest, and we kind of debate and we'll give you totals and what came out on top when we get there. And does someone else want to talk about what consoles we're doing?
Sure. We decided not to do everything under the sun because, we wouldn't want a 4-hour podcast. So we'll just stick to the 3-hour podcast. But we're doing Atari, NES, SNES, Genesis, PS1, N64, Saturn, and PS2. Are there anything on this list you guys wish we did, just out of curiosity? Like anything that, like, now that you're looking at what we have here, like, you're like, should have done that?
I don't think so, because I think we picked these with the idea that if we were to ask the average collector, like, what are the best consoles to collect for, this is what we would have got to. And we want to expand in the future, and we'll go over portables. Yeah, I know there's a whole subset of people going like, what about Yes, we know. Settle down. We will do one specifically for portables, and then this spreadsheet is going to live on our Patreon and Discord, so you'll be able to find it, and we can tell you what the overall rankings. My goal is I want to put this up, and then I want our patrons to be able to go in and put their rankings. So the Collector's Quest Discord will have like its whole ranking. Absent of what just the hosted, like what did our whole Discord feel about this, and so they can kind of see how they stacked against what we would have rated. So it's a fun little addition there as well. So nothing yet to answer your question specifically, because I want to do more of these, Stefan. And then when we go back and we do So You Want to Collect, we'll be able to reference this rankings and go back to this document that we have and, add to it and then expand. Like we want to do one with modern consoles and, like I said, portables or least collectible consoles and stuff like that. So we can play around with this as an idea.
Yeah, I think for me, Turbo was the only one that I was like, oh, interesting.
Okay.
I expected it to be on this list.
Would you? I guess you probably could. But I was gonna say, would you find many people saying TurboGrafx is the most collectible system? And yes. Yeah, there's some weirdos, and we know them, but
yes.
They're wrong.
Weirdos are our
they're
friends.
wrong, and they should know they're wrong.
Our friends, weirdos, and former listeners.
Yeah, well, but those people, a lot of those people are like pretty.
We're going to save that for the ranking niche consoles episode where we go over 3DO and CDI and all that garbage.
Yeah, because that's an episode we want to do as well. So
I guess, should we start with Atari, guys? I feel like I feel like there is someone I have to justify putting Atari 2600 into this episode into. I do want to point out that Atari Age is probably the largest traditional retro game and game collecting forum ever, and kind of always has been. Someone might be able to provide a counterexample, maybe like Reset Era, which is what NeoGAF was. I don't know how much they're into like game collecting and actually retro stuff, but Atari Age is and always has been enormous, way bigger than Nintendo Age ever was. So I think there is a huge amount of people who would call Atari 2600 the most collectible console of all time. However right they may be about that.
Or however close to death they are.
Yeah.
Those people don't even listen to podcasts because they can't figure out how to get them on their radio.
That's right.
All right. So Atari game quality, remembering that 1 is the lowest and 7 is the highest. Johnny gave it a 2. I gave it a 3, and Stefan gave it a 2. Guys, we're not so hot on Atari. You guys seem to really not like Atari.
I don't think I'm being a hater here with Atari. I think it's a limitation of the hardware, not necessarily like of the time, yeah, but I think it's just limited. There's one button and the joystick is one type, so there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much processing power. So I think they did a lot for what they had, but I think it's just kind of locked in there.
Because look, we're still looking at this through the lens of like sitting here in 2022, right? Looking back at this thing, and so like if we were talking about this in the 80s, then it would be a very different conversation about game quality. But we are where we are, and so I think it's fair to give a relatively low score to game quality because we have the history of gaming to compare it to. So
yeah, and I mean that's absent of like, again, as Stefan was saying, it's not a time capsule. This is being compared to. It's not its fault. I don't blame it, but it is its
I
era.
ain't mad at you.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I only gave it 1 point higher. I recognize that we're putting this on the same scale as like PlayStation 1. But I think there are excellent Atari games. Like, just period. It's a console that has at least some amount of excellent games. And as someone who played through the Fairchild Channel F library, I know there are consoles with no redeeming games that would be like 1s, and I could probably think of a 2 that would definitely go under Atari, like Atari 5200, Atari 7800, all that stuff I would definitely put below Atari 2600. So I've got it.
Yeah, isn't the Fairchild like all those games are like a variety of like varying degrees of just like blocks, like moving blocks?
No, it's closer to the Odyssey 2 in the graphics, I think. But there's no innovation to any. They're all ripoffs of other games for other systems.
Right.
So game variety for Atari 2600. Johnny and Stefan went with a 3, and I went with a 4. Again, Tyler giving Atari more props than it's due.
Look, I don't think the messing around with the physical switch on the console counts as variety. Which actually I considered when I was figuring this out, but. Yeah, man, there's just, there was, I mean, it's sort of game quality and game variety, I think, for this particular console, because to Johnny's earlier point, it's so, that we're looking so far back. Game variety and game quality are going to be almost synonymous, if not just related, in that, like, there was just the same hardware limitations that were affecting game quality are going to be affecting game variety as well.
I agree. And I think Atari is heavy on easy stuff with like a black background, so 2D shooters. But I do think the Wild West factor definitely is going to bump it up to at least a 4 for me, because there are games like Dragster, a game that literally takes like less than 10 seconds to play the entire game. And there's nothing like that. You can't, I mean, you know what? There's something like it on the Fairchild Channel F because they totally ripped it off. But like, there's nothing like that anywhere past Atari. You'll never see a game like that, or even Kaboom, where kind of a reverse Breakout almost, or Quad Run is a shooter where the game plays on like a plus sign. It makes no sense. You shoot and then you have to catch your bullet. Like, who would ever design a game like that? And that aspect of the Atari 2600 bumps up to a 4, which I would put as middle of the road.
I'd just say I think Atari did a lot with what they had, but I'm still constraining it to my hardware limitations argument. But you can see that it's for game variety is higher than my game quality score by 1. I think for what they did and like, pioneering a lot of stuff, pretty awesome. But still not better than a 3.
So this is a hard one now. Iconic titles for Atari 2600. Johnny went with 4, I went with 3, and Stefan went with 2. And I think this is specifically hard because I think some of the most iconic Atari titles are just ports, and being a port doesn't necessarily make me think of it being an iconic Atari title.
Well, and I'll come in and just say something about that. So I think with Atari, especially Atari, when it was like trying to bring the arcade to your house, not like when we got Nintendo, which was like, okay, we can bring some of our stuff, but we can also build our own IPs here. Like the Atari was like, I am bringing the arcade to you. And that was the idea. Like, oh my God, you're going to bring me the arcade. So I give that more Like I give it a point bump there because yes, they're ports, but like I just feel like the Atari was supposed to be a port machine. It was supposed to be representing the idea of how cool it would be to have those things in your house.
This is our biggest spread, I think, right?
I mean, it's one of our biggest spreads in the entire spreadsheet.
Yeah, one of the things that I was going to say is for iconic titles, one of the things that factored in for me was how many franchises that like were unique to the Atari 2600 or like that the 2600 was really known for are still being produced today, like have actually like lived through to today. And I, off the top of my head, couldn't really think of any except for like maybe Pitfall, but even then, when was the last time a Pitfall game came out? So that was really like where I docked it the most, is that like, because when I think of like iconic titles, obviously let's take Mario for example, because it's the easiest. They're still making fucking Mario games all the time, and so like staying power of licenses or staying power of franchises was really sort of how I judged iconic titles for this.
Yeah, this entire category is just our way of making sure that every Nintendo console beats every other console, because everything is more collectible because it's Nintendo, because it has Mario, Zelda, and Metroid games on it.
I mean, but that reflects the prices of games, right? And what Nintendo's done versus what other systems have done.
What do you mean?
Well, like on aggregate, Nintendo consoles are more collectible.
Oh yeah,
that we didn't decide that. That wasn't our choice.
I know.
Yeah, like we weren't like we are just a bunch of Nintendo stands. So here we go. That's just what the prices reflect.
So when I thought of iconic Atari 2600 games, the first thing I thought of was Yar's Revenge, and then I immediately thought if I asked my mom what is Yar's Revenge, would she know? And the answer is no. And then I'm like, all right, I guess it's got like Adventure and Pitfall, and I guess it's fine.
If you asked her who was the best dancer at your wedding, she would know, and it would be me.
All right, I gotta put you back in touch with my mom. She's probably missing right now.
No, you don't. It's on Facebook. He can reach her.
I've never been out of touch with your mom.
Value proposition. If you're buying Atari 2600 games right now, do you think that is a good long-term value at the price they're at? Johnny, you put a 2. I put a 4, and Stefan put a 2. God, do you really think Atari 2600 is that bad of a value?
I just don't think. I don't know how much more room it has to go up, and I think
that's where I was there.
Because we've already hit like a peak. We're not talking about what it's done historically. Like the other categories, it's like more of a historical look. This is a right now kind of view, and how I think the future looks for Atari. And I don't think its future's so bright it gotta wear shades. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't have much to add there, but I agree wholeheartely with you. Like if you were talking about like, oh, the like 25-cent cartridges that I picked up 10 years ago or whatever, then yeah, okay, now they're $5 games, and that's a pretty good return on my money, I guess. But like now, I just don't I don't see a ton of expansion.
I think Atari 2600 is probably among the console that people are most likely to collect that they weren't even alive for when it was out. And I guess that's going to expand to like, all the Nintendo consoles when you get into, a 16-year-old collecting games. But I think in the future, speaking from like second generation video game consoles, like people are going to ignore everything except for Atari 2600 if they do go back that far.
And they won't.
Okay. No one will ever be interested in video game history.
I'm just saying there are people collecting tapes and records, but no one's collecting 8-tracks.
I don't think Atari 2600 is not 8-track. Atari 5200 is 8-track.
That's
ColecoVision is 8-track. I'm calling you out. ColecoVision sucks. You can book me on that. I do not like ColecoVision. I know people.
Well, yeah, I can't wait till we rate ColecoVision and you throw your ones down.
ColecoVision has Smurfs though.
Smurfs is great.
It's got an acceptable arcade port. Do you want to play this game? It's like 20% as good compared to the Atari one, which is like 10% as good. All right, cost of collecting. Johnny, you put a 5. I put a 6, and Stefan put a 5. Guys, Atari games are pretty cheap. I think the average Atari game is like $30. So I think we could all agree it's pretty cheap to collect.
Yeah, like fairly inexpensive.
Yeah, I think the only thing that made me not rate it quote unquote higher for this one is that I didn't have as much experience like collecting anything but carts. Like I have a scant handful of carts of CIB Atari games, but I figured that CIB would be some factor more expensive than carts, which...
Yeah, and I want to just throw out, sorry, Stefan, but we are only talking about CIB stuff. There will be a time when we talk about loose Atari, loose Nintendo, loose Super Nintendo, but that is not this episode. We're talking games in boxes.
For sure, but like, it can't not color my like ability to do this either. So.
Absolutely.
I just want to point out a fun fact. I realize that price charting for really, really cheap stuff doesn't mean anything, but for the first time ever, the average Atari game cartridge price is above $10, which is like... that's not true. There's definitely still Atari dollar bins or close to it. In my local store, it's like a $5 bin, but yeah. That's crazy to think that the average is above $10 for games that...
That's pretty weird.
No one wanted for the longest time. Extendability, guys. After you complete a set, we can't really complete an Atari set. What can you do? All right, and we all put 5s for this. And Atari has maybe the best homebrew scene of any console ever. Which I don't think there's a ton to collect. If you actually collected every Atari game, which isn't possible, I don't know that there's much to collect besides homebrew. I guess, like I'm thinking like add-on. What can you get besides homebrew? But the homebrew scene is so good, so. I'm almost talking myself into bumping it up one.
I rated this entirely on my experience with Atari Homebrew through the lens of you, Tyler.
Oh, fantastic.
So you are my exposure vector to Atari Homebrew.
I mean, if you get into one of these Atari groups, you'll see all the Homebrew updates, and like monthly, they'll just be like, here's a dozen new games we're throwing up on the store. And it's like...
Actually, you know what? That's a lie. I did buy without your influence before I knew you. I think the Halo homebrew.
I was gonna say if there was one that you bought, I would have guessed it's Halo 2600.
Halo.
Yeah, it's Halo, and I also it wasn't 2600, but the Flight of the Navigator, or not Flight of the Navigator, the other one, Last Starfighter. There was a Last Starfighter homebrew that I picked up, but it was an Atari system, but not 26.
See, this is what's gonna talk me down from putting it to a 6, is because all this aftermarket stuff, they love doing arcade ports. Programmers are just obsessed with putting an 80s arcade port on a console that definitely can't handle it and doing the best job they can. But I have no interest in collecting like bootleg arcade ports. So for me, I'm not bumping it up to a 6. Johnny, you have anything else for this, or is it just the homebrew, basically?
No, it's just the homebrew, and I think that's why it's only a 5 for me, because that's the only thing you can really do. There's nothing to really expand beyond that. I think it is pretty much what it is.
All right. The tilt, the cool factor, the historical significance, anything else? Johnny, you put...
Wait, can we go back for just a second? I have a question for you, Tyler.
What?
Because I know we pretty much factored in other regions to like a lot of these consoles, or at least I did when I was figuring this out. Like interesting other regions. Is there a ton of like other region 2600 stuff? Like I don't honestly know, so I'm asking you.
I'm sure there is, just because it's so easy to make Atari games, but I don't know. I mean, it's an American console.
It was still going in Brazil for a long time, right? Am I making that up?
Probably. I mean, Brazil's console release date was like a little bit later than, like, they had stuff going longer than most places, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know specifically 2600. I think the last game that people would consider a real release before Homebrew starts, I think is Clax, which came out in the UK. I don't know. That's all I got.
Yeah, carry on. I was just curious.
All right, Tilt. Johnny put a 3. I put a 4, and Stefan put a 3. Guys, I just want to say we've been really consistent on most of these ratings for the entire document. I think it's actually kind of interesting.
We didn't actually copy each other, for the record.
No.
Like I didn't even look at your columns when I did these.
I think it's interesting because I think if we talk it out, our opinions sound more divergent than they are, which shows that, we like to argue over the small things, but when we take a more global perspective, we're kind of in line.
True.
All right, anything you guys got to say? I think Atari collections are super cool. I think like if I see a shelf of Atari games and you like got like that Atari section with those solid colors and all the third-party games have similar boxes, so they all have like their own nice little sections. I think big Atari collections look awesome. Box quality, some of the cheapest, shittiest boxes ever.
They always look terrible though, unless you have like beautiful, just destroyed.
Yeah. Because a lot of boxes, the backs were glued down, so you basically have to destroy the box to open it, and there's just like, you can't get like even like an 8 out of 10 box from a box that came like that.
Yeah,
so I had this as a 1 originally.
Rude.
But then talking to these two, I thought about how amazing some of the box art is for 2600, because I mean everybody knows that's how the system sold its games, is not on the quality of the quality or variety of the games. It was on the box art. So there's some phenomenal box art, and that's how it got me up to a 3 from a 1.
I was going to say, the only thing, and what brings me down from a 4 to a 3 is, one, the quality of the boxes, as we talked about, but also some of the inconsistency of the boxes. You know, just like printing, all the titles not being the same way. And it's not like a few games, like all systems have like that one game where you're just like, why is the text backwards on the spine on this one? But Atari, everything is kind of a mess. And I'm just like, okay, I can't, it's too much inconsistency in it.
The boxes are different sizes. It's great.
I know. No, it's awful. I do not like.
Stefan, you're in the art scene. If you know who has the original art for Atari Basic Programming, it's like among my favorite box arts of all time. And I realize they'll probably never get rid of it because it's a first party Atari game, but it would be super cool to have that. And I can't afford it. So why am I even talking about it? All right, guys, after those 7 categories, Johnny put Atari at a 24. My totals add up to a 29. And Stefan's, the Atari hater, 22, almost the lowest score that anyone gave any console. That gives Atari a total of 75, and I guess we should give some ranges here. 21 would be the minimum score, and 147 is the maximum, so 75, Atari is that in the middle, or is that kind of towards the lower end? That's towards the lower end.
So, and just to add on what Tyler said, the minimum score that can be given by one of us, the scores, is a 7. You know, if we gave something 1s across, but 21 is our group maximum total. So that 21 is the minimum total. 147 is the max total. 49 is the max score an individual can give. Let's go. Stefan, I'll go, and let's talk about the NES. Everybody's favorite system to collect for, right?
7's all across. It's the best console ever, guys.
Yep, got a 147 done. We all agree. No, game quality, again, really consistent. I've got a 4. Tyler's got a 5. Stefan, you got a 4. Anything you want to say about this? Because Nintendo was pretty good.
It's the best console ever.
I mean, are you guys... 4 is average, and I feel like there are enough games where the developers put everything into it and like pushed what they could do with the hardware and knowledge of game design at the time. Like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out with its huge sprites and everyone's super emotive is super ahead of its time, and Castlevania 3 all the way at the end of the library, it's like it's so good. It's like a fucking masterpiece. I don't know.
Look, I just feel like, so for me, spoiler alert, I gave the SNES a 7 on this, but the reason why I kind of went lower on NES, it does honestly have something to do with, and this is sort of a very personal opinion, but these are all our personal opinions. So the quality of game and like the quality of storytelling, and I'm big on storytelling in games. It didn't really get there till the SNES, and a lot of that has to do with like the just slightly more memory and like having save batteries and stuff like that. Like those are the kinds of things where I feel like the SNES was where it started to really kind of deliver for me on quality of games, like from a storytelling perspective. And so that's sort of where my 4 for the NES kind of came in, is like even the stuff that like was really ambitious, like Final Fantasy, for instance. Like I still think that was a huge outlier, right? As far as like the console's ability to tell me a story. And I think there's, even though there are those outliers, I think there's enough in that franchise that like ends with "a winner is you." that's where sort of my 4 came in, is just sort of the console's sort of inability to be a really heavy storytelling console.
Stories are for movies. Johnny, move on to game variety.
Okay. Yeah, I basically agree with what Stefan said, but it was hard. I was in between a 4 and a 5 because the Nintendo did some amazing things. The 4 is not necessarily a bad score, especially given the era that it was in. That's like, of the era, very good. Game variety is our next category. We gave it 4s across the board because I think hardware limitations. Does anyone have anything that they want to go into on this? I mean, it had great third-party support. The library is fairly diverse. Why did we give it 4s?
You know what? I almost went 5 on this because of just sort of like the weird shitometer stuff in NES. Like there was a lot of experimentation to be had. Like, I don't know. There was also just like a glut of arcade ports. There was a glut of like side-scrolling beat 'em ups that weren't great. There's like I don't know.
I mean, I think one of the things that came into my mind, because we have third-party support listed under game variety, and there's great third-party support from like Capcom and Konami, and you think about it, and it's like, man, like 75% of those games are just side-scrollers, which is what the NES was built to do. The hardware was built to facilitate side-scrolling games, but there's like entire genres that basically don't exist, like horror or rhythms, stuff that didn't exist at the time. And if we're not including Famicom, things like adventure games, Famicom has way more adventure games and visual novels and things like that weren't really a thing on NES. So I think it could have done better in variety.
Tyler, those were my exact points, because again, we're looking at this against all other consoles and what they can bring, and the hardware is of its time. It's not its fault it didn't bring that necessarily, but it doesn't have it. So there's where my points come off.
But Tyler, let's not forget that the first rhythm game is Dance Aerobics for the NES.
Do I? Man, do I need to get like a mint Dance Aerobics? Because I want the whole reason. I think Parappa the Rapper is cool because it's like the first real rhythm game.
Oh yeah, no,
But
yeah, you totally do then.
Dance Aerobics.
Yeah, you need it. You need
Might
it.
be stadium events.
It 100% is.
I need to go research the history of rhythm games. That's a good rabbit hole for me to go down, Step.
Yeah. Well, there goes Tyler's rest.
That's
today.
what Tyler needs.
Anyways,
I love rhythm games, man.
let's move on, guys. Iconic titles. We gave this 7 across the board because it's the Nintendo.
Yeah, all of the lasting, sort of kind of like the opposite of my point from the 2600, where none of their franchises are surviving today. Like, there are just so many franchises that started on the NES that are still alive and around and making games regularly. It's ridiculous.
This is one of only 2 categories on the entire spreadsheet we gave 7s across the board.
Yeah.
My default when I'm talking about like classic Nintendo things, I say Mario, Zelda, Metroid, and all those are just NES games that started on NES. So very clearly, iconic games.
Final Fantasy, Castlevania, just so many things are right here. It's aside from some of the stuff that came from Atari, like just the genesis of like some of the greatest franchises of all times are right here. It's hard to dispute it. And it's not like it's competed. It's not like the PS2 era where it's like, oh, what's going on the Xbox and like on the Nintendo GameCube. It's just all right here. It's amazing.
Also, mascots is something that we put in this category. And like there is a mascot on this console that has the same amount of brand recognition worldwide as Mickey Mouse, as Coke, right? Like Mario is synonymous with those brands.
Mario has a land in a theme park. Okay, guys?
Yeah,
here we
exactly.
go.
So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I would have given this more than 7 if I could.
Yeah. All right. So I think everyone should understand that. And if you want to argue that, feel free to hit me up. Value proposition. Are we getting our money back out when we put it in, guys? 6 for me, 6 for Tyler, and a 7 for Stefan. Yep. All pretty close, but I think the Nintendo was kind of, I'm not going to say it's capped out, but I think due to the heavy investing scene, especially around the Nintendo, I think it has kind of retracted that a little bit. And I don't know how much there is to get. And I'm wary about investment quality stuff. So I'm just trying to think about CIB games, not investment stuff. So I couldn't quite give it to 7.
Yeah, I specifically didn't consider sealed graded because that market is so volatile, and because you just never know. Like, if you put something on a specific auction house versus one auction house versus another, you might get a difference of $10,000 to $50,000 difference in the hammer price just because you put it in the wrong place. So like I can't that is so volatile. I didn't even consider it when I was.
Yeah, I didn't consider anything sealed either. The only reason I didn't put, I think NES, maybe it will be the most collectible console forever, just in general, just because it's the first Nintendo console that came out in America.
See iconic title scores.
Yeah, exactly. The only reason I didn't go with 7 is that I do think for the time we're in that maybe some complete in box games are a little frothy and maybe don't have the ultimate long-term value. And I've discussed this before, like Little Samson, I think tremendous NES game. I think it's a classic. I also think if you're spending $6,000 on a complete in box Little Samson, I don't know that anyone's going to care about Little Samson in 20 years.
Okay. Let's move on. Cost of collecting. Is this expensive? Cost per game, set killers. Hey, the prime example of a set killer is here in Stadium Events. So let's talk about our scores. I gave it a 3. Tyler gave it a 3. Stefan gave it a 2. Meaning it's expensive. Pretty expensive. Stefan says it's more than pretty expensive. It's very expensive.
Very expensive. And honestly, what got me over the line on there was a Stadium Events, but also the black box titles and like the even not in not sealed condition, like how ridiculous they've gotten in the last 2 years. That put me from a 3 to a 2. Honestly, I could, like, if we were scoring this, we decided early on that this was a rating and not a ranking, and if it were a ranking, then this would have been a 1 for me.
Fair. Okay. Tyler, you got anything? You want to defend your 3? Are you good there? Like, I could even see myself putting it as a 2, but I felt like 3 is more indicative of the...
I feel like 2 gets into the category where it's like, it's so expensive that I don't want to collect it just because of the price, but like, I mean, stuff hurts to buy an NES sometimes, but also kind of you're getting an NES 7 out of 7 iconic game out of it a lot of the time, so exactly. I don't think it hurts that much.
My calculus was the same there. Like the iconic titles and the value proposition factor into the cost of collecting for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Extendability. Wow, that's weird. Okay, so we all gave this 7s across the board because, man, you sure can collect Nintendo any way you want to and keep going forever, it seems like.
Yeah.
I mean,
not just homebrews, but just like this is when I started to think about like other regions, because it's not just like, does another region exist, but like, do I see people? It's the same kind of the same thing with was it Saturn? Did I misdo Saturn? Anyway, but like, it's like, do I see people going into that other region? Like, that definitely factored into it. Like, people love their fucking Euro NES games, and they're obviously they're Super Famicom games, or they're Famicom games rather. So, but like also like the disc system, and there's just like so much stuff with the NES.
I mean, people have the weird screw collections, and people go crazier on variants than any other system, and people have more test stuff than any other system. Yeah. If you collected one console forever, NES would be the console to do it, because you would never, ever be finished. You couldn't even keep up with all the freaking Kickstarters that come out, because there's so many new NES games these days.
Would you say how is the homebrew scene, since you're sort of plugged into both of them, Tyler? How's the homebrew scene when compared to the 2600?
I'm not plugged in enough to the 2600 scene. I mean, 2600 games are a lot smaller, so I think they're easier to make. And also there's the factor that NES Maker came out a couple years ago, and now there are a lot of NES homebrews coming on like platforms like Kickstarter. There's probably still more Atari 2600 games just because they're smaller games, but the amount of bigger NES games, not even like big NES games, just like decent size, just like a regular puzzle game, a regular platformer. It's just like, it's crazy how many NES games still come out.
All right. So let's go to the tilt factor, the coolness. How cool? What are the other historical significance of this? This is one where we diverge a little bit, and I might be wrong here, so you guys will have to tell me. My score is a 5. You guys gave it 6s.
What brings it down to a 5? Like I almost put a 7, I think.
Okay, so yes, I agree on the historical significance. Hardware issues, kind of. Yes, you can fix it and you can add pins, but if we're just talking out of the box, like you do get like Blinky and like, you know, the blowing in the cart. One of my perspectives was always as a kid trying to make the goddamn Nintendo work the whole time. Were you blowing in it? Were you just barely crusting that edge as you pushed it down? Were your springs broken? Did you have to have pins replaced later? So that I also, the controller is good but not great. Gets a little those squared edges. Also, box quality is another area I dinged it. While the boxes I think are generally okay, the minute you take that styrofoam piece out, the whole boxes fall apart and you get like weird stuff. The tabs rip off pretty easily. So I dinged it here. Like I really could have pushed it at a 6. I was wavering. So am I wrong? Am I wrong with 5? Should it have been a 6?
No, I think the biggest reason it's not a 7 for me is that I think stuff in the boxes with all the shit that's supposed to be in there is such a pain in the ass that I never want to open my NES games that are complete box, especially if they have the baggie. It doesn't fit. It's so hard to refit a game back together with the baggie and like not do any damage, not tear anything, not have it bowing out. I just hate touching my NES games. So yeah, it's not getting a 7 for me.
My 6, I think, came mostly from like the nostalgia factor for me, which I also kind of put in here, and just like how like when I look at a pile of fucking NES games, that's like my childhood, like, and that's cool. So that's like, that's where most of my that's why I got a 6 over a 5 for me.
All right. The Nintendo got a very commanding score. Got 111 points total. I gave it a 36, and that's out of a maximum of 49. Tyler has it at 38. Stefan has 37. All of our scores are super close. We're within 2 points of each other at the lowest. So let's move on to the next console. Stefan, take it away with Super Nintendo.
I'm actually surprised you gave me Super Nintendo, Johnny. I thought you were going to take that for yourself. But Super Nintendo, by a damn sight, the favorite console of Johnny and I. So let's start out, gentlemen, with game quality for the Super Nintendo. We gave it 7s across the board. Johnny, I'm going to go to you first to discuss.
Again, and a lot of this, I think, is some of my bias. And to be fair, I don't know if on a couple of these categories, I can be objective. Too much wrapped up into the Super Nintendo. I love the games. It has RPGs, it has shooters, it's got fighters. I mean, yeah, it lacks on some of the visual novels. I can see where it lacks on some, but also the games, when they're good, they're amazing. If you think about what was good about the Nintendo and the best games from Nintendo, for the most part, I'm looking at you, Ninja Good, when they got ported over to the Super Nintendo, they became better versions of what already existed. Like Mario went to Mario World, Zelda to Link to the Past. It was just like these incredible leaps. Games that I thought couldn't be made better were suddenly better. That for me is always going to be the factor. And I've never felt that way about any other system since. It's been like, oh yeah, it like upgraded, but I felt like the leap was so significant and astounding to me. But also that has a lot wrapped up into, what my life was at the time and how I was viewing that system, which was kind of like, my holy grail as a child. Like it was a whole journey for me to get the damn thing. So I've got too much invested emotionally.
Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, the whole upgrading 8-bit to 16-bit, like Metroid to Super Metroid is a big step. It's not a whole brand new concept. The game innovation thing we put in the next category of game variety. So, I mean, the game quality, games like Super Metroid and Yoshi's Island are just ridiculously well-made games. I mean, 7 out of 7 for game quality. Almost everyone in the universe is going to agree with that.
Yeah, I think for me, what got it the 7 over anything lower was like not only are the highs incredibly high on the Super Nintendo, but I also feel generally, I'm generalizing very heavily here, like the lows, like the absolute bottom of the barrel Super Nintendo experience is not as bad, by a long shot as the bottom of the barrel of the NES, for instance. Like I feel like even the bad is still all right. Like SNES games are like pizza. Like even the terrible pizza, it's still pizza.
Go
so
play
that's
D-Force. It's a 2D shooter. It's worse than the worst NES shooter you'll ever find.
Is that the one with the soundtrack with the oh god, was Too Limited? Was that the There's a shooter on the NES or the SNES that
probably not
has that.
I can't even remember the soundtrack because the audio clips constantly because the game is so poorly made.
Oh god.
See Rap Jam.
Oh, Rap
Volume
Jam, one
one.
of the most collectible Super Nintendo games. I heard that there was a 10 out of 10
Super
copy
high
that sold
auction.
for like tens of thousands
Yeah.
of dollars.
So it's so amazing. I also love that it's called Volume 1. The audacity of calling that game Volume 1 is just chef's kiss the best. I like the cheek factor of that game wins it a lot of points for me, but let's move on. I think we've said enough about that.
Gentlemen, moving on to game variety. Johnny gave it a 6. Tyler gave it a 5. I gave it a 5. Tyler, why not a 6?
I don't know. Like, there's genres that aren't amazing on the SNES. So SNES has shooters, but I wouldn't call it like a great shooter console. I mean, it doesn't have like Western style RPGs. There's some genres I think are a little lacking. I don't think it's terrible.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I was at. I don't have anything to add to Tyler here, but Johnny did give it a 6, and we gave it 5. So Johnny, what got one over?
Again, I may have been my rose-colored glasses here. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe it should have been a 5. Like we've talked about maybe the variety isn't quite there.
Peer pressure, change it.
Well,
Change it. 5 is still like a good score.
Yeah, no, 5 is a great score. I am gonna go down to a 5.
Woo!
I'm gonna
5's across
I'm
the
gonna
board.
agree with you. Yeah, no, I was thinking about like rhythm games not being involved, and like there's not a lot of gun games on there, right? Like the light shooter was more of a thing on the NES than it was on the Super Nintendo, so we kind of lost a little bit there. And so
We got the Super Scope though, but then like I think the Super
that's not real. The
Super's
Super Super Scope should have been cool, but instead it like makes the Super Nintendo worse rather than better.
Honestly though, like Battle Clash is like I really enjoyed Battle Clash.
I mean, that's fine, but I think it's like net negative, not net positive.
No, I agree.
Because you bought like this hulking thing and then didn't get to do much with it. And the Zapper, like, yeah, it kind of fell off, especially later in the console, but the Zapper is still cool. And the Super Scope is less so. And the Zapper, you can tuck away in a drawer, and the Super Scope, you have to like stack in a corner, and it's cumbersome and stupid.
Also, that trigger on the Zapper, that cha-ching.
Click.
Like that's
That- yeah,
oh
that
man,
spring-
feels so
yeah.
good.
Satisfying.
Feels and sounds really good. All right, iconic titles. We gave Johnny gave it a 6. Tyler gave it a 7, and I also gave it a 6. I'll start with me this time. I think the biggest thing, and again, I'm gonna keep going back to like core franchises on the platforms, is that like a lot of there are like many iconic titles on the SNES, but like a lot of those big franchises were carried over from its older brother, the NES. So that's sort of what kept it out of 7 for me. Is just that there a lot of the iconic titles on the SNES are franchises that were carried over from the previous generation.
Does not matter. Super Metroid is arguably more iconic than Metroid. In fact, I would say it's definitely more iconic than Metroid.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but is Mario more iconic on the Nintendo or on the Super Nintendo?
You see, the fact that that's a debatable question means that there's no way I'm changing my score from a 7 out of 7. I think it's more iconic on the NES, definitely.
Yeah. I don't think that's debatable. I think Mario is like 100% locked into the NES, and like may even be more iconic on the N64, which is wrong. But
Ooh, that's
All
a hot
right,
take.
let me just go over some things that aren't sequels, like Chrono Trigger, Donkey Kong Country, F-Zero, Star Fox, Secret of Mana is technically a sequel, but no one cares. Mega Man X, technically a new franchise. Turtles in Time is a sequel, but no one cares. It's still iconic.
Earthbound, technically a sequel.
NBA Jam, Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 2, Harvest Moon, Pilot Wings, we're not going to talk about that. Super Mario Kart, the start of Nintendo's most popular franchise, the Super Star Wars series. Really? You guys aren't going 7 out of 7 on Super Nintendo? When the SNES Classic came out, I'm like, oh my god, they did it. They put all the best games into one thing. They didn't like cheap out on anything.
So are you saying that the SNES, there is a equal amount or equal quality of iconic Super Nintendo games as there are iconic Nintendo games?
Yes. 100%. Even the sequels, even like Final Fantasy 3 is a game people think about as much as Final Fantasy, I think.
And then maybe even more than Final Fantasy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Tyler, I'm like buying your argument, but I'm also with Stefan on his that like it got to borrow from what the Nintendo already had established.
Yeah,
so like it's not that it isn't amazing. It just like already had built in. So I have to think about it. All right, I'm sticking to my 6, but I'm not saying a 7 is wrong.
Part of it is that if you ask people what their favorite Metro game, what their favorite Zelda game, and what their favorite Mario game is, I bet the one that people think is their favorite is on SNES most of the time.
Well, not Mario. I'm telling you, N64 Mario is going to get way too many votes. And that tings it for me right there.
N64 people, even I think Super Mario 64 is better, but still.
Yeah, no, Super Mario World, I think, is an amazing game, and it's not the same style as Mario 64. And yeah, Mario World is amazing. I think it's better than Mario 3.
Oh, yeah. Hands down.
All right, let's keep going. We're not really that far off on this one.
Yeah.
But we had some unique arguments. So I was down with it. Sure. Value proposition, Johnny gave it a 5, and both Tyler and I gave it a 6. Going back to you to start, Johnny.
Well, the only reason I'm a little leery right now about where boxed Super Nintendo games are and the quality of the boxes that are available. So if you had to go in, and again, thinking in this moment, and you had to go buy, I don't think you're getting the best stuff. If you're waiting, and you might be paying high, because I don't know what's going on in the Super Nintendo market. It feels like hoarding is still happening. So yes, if you get a nice copy, like, and one of these iconic titles, because it has so many iconic titles, like, it's hard to lose in that sense, especially given a long enough time frame. But also, I'm just skeptical of what the market is right now for Super Nintendo. If you were buying today, my score is a 5.
Tyler?
I mean, that makes sense. I would just say if I was going to pick a golden age of Nintendo, it's NES, Game Boy, and Super Nintendo. I think that will always kind of be the case. And because the quality of the games is so high, I think people will play them forever, or at least be historically interested in them. So even as expensive as they are, I think if you buy Super Metroid, even if it's a couple $100, you're probably going to be fine. I don't see Super Metroid going down in price. I don't see Super Mario World going down in price unless there's some huge bubble on that.
Super Mario World is insane right now.
I know,
Did you
that's
see
insane right now. That's probably like, what, $1,000?
Oh, we love to do predictions. I'm just going to go back to the things. When we told you to go buy Super Mario World right then and there, should have listened to us. Should have listened to us.
Earthbound has gotten ridiculous as well.
Mario World's like complete box. They were selling over $1,000. I don't know what is going on.
That's crazy.
It's not even the first print, Johnny.
I know.
Yeah, so for me, the thing that actually kept it out of the 7, because the two things that are really kind of weighed heavily in this category is the long-term value, but then also potential to grow. And while I think there is long-term value in Super Nintendo, I am less sure about the potential to grow on a lot of these titles. So that's sort of where I'm at. Like, I think if you bought in now, you're fine, but like, I don't know how, you're not gonna 10x your money anymore. I don't think. You should grab that as a quote and quote me in 5 years.
I'll let you know when Super Mario World is a $10,000 complete in box game.
Yeah.
My new prediction is go buy Super Mario World 2. Not enough people love or talk about this game, and it's still undervalued.
I think there's like still a pretty decent amount of people who don't actually know that it's Super Mario World 2. Yeah,
I think, I mean, just the price disparity in the two games, I think is too high, and I think it will start to go up as people look more into Mario World. So
All right,
That's my
Johnny.
call.
Johnny, I'm gonna say it. My pick on Super Nintendo, still Super Mario World. It's got to be one of the only major 10 out of 10 A++. I'm sound like I'm describing a WADA game, but it's like a keystone, like ultimate Nintendo title. It actually has built-in scarcity because it was technically released like 2 years into the SNES lifespan in like this weird complete in box thing. And there's no other like Mario, Zelda, Metroid major Nintendo game that has something like that. So it's always going to be one of the rarest key Nintendo games, I think.
We both went into how important buying Super Mario. I'm just saying, like right now, value proposition, go buy Mario World 2. I think it's got room to go. Up.
All right, we'll come back at some time in the future and we'll see how right I am, because no one cares about Super Mario World 2. Even though, like, I'm not going to say it's the better game, but man, it's complex. It is such a good game.
It's better. It's better than the cover would tell you it is. Okay, guys.
That's right. All right, speaking of going up, cost of collecting. Johnny gave it a 3. Tyler gave it a 2. I also gave it a 3. Tyler, why a 2?
Johnny said it before. Nice complete in box Super Nintendo games are hard to find and they are incredibly expensive. I think even getting like a pretty nice Super Nintendo complete in box is super expensive. Maybe one of my least favorite things to buy would be a nice Super Nintendo game. So 2.
Also, those black boxes take dings so bad. Like all color breaks show because of the black. Ugh.
Yeah, and not to mention the like Majesco releases, like all the other like those are real gross.
Oh no, we're talking about collectible video games here, Stefan.
Oh,
to be clear,
isn't Chrono Trigger anyway?
It's not Majesco. It's just made in Mexico.
Yeah, for me, I think the only reason why this got a 3 instead of a 2 is because I gave a 2 to the NES, and I just felt like the NES was at least some margin more expensive than the SNES. That was really my only reasoning why I gave it a 3. Johnny?
I just don't think it's crossed the Nintendo threshold. I think it's very expensive. Conditional rarity, it's hard because we're not really factoring conditional rarity, I think, enough, especially in consoles like the NES and SNES, because then it goes crazy. So I was taking a flat aggregate and just saying a 3. But if you factored into, if you want nice Super Nintendo games, it's like 2 pushing a 1.
Yeah, I actually put Super Nintendo worse than Nintendo, because when I think of like the best RPGs, I'm thinking Chrono Trigger and Earthbound, and those are many hundreds of dollars. What does a Final Fantasy cost on NES? What does a Crystalis cost on NES? There are genres I think that Super Nintendo is worse than Nintendo if you're buying like the best iconic stuff.
True. I think that's fair. But again, if you start to like weigh the conditional rarity and like what people are doing in Nintendo, like buying it for investment purposes, that's why I have Nintendo. I guess score.
Part of mine is also like I don't care about the black box games, so that factors lower into the cost of collecting for me because I'm just not buying black box games. Could not care less if I had a Wild Gunman.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of people that are going to collect will care about those, and they're going to be fighting against people who've already designated those titles as investor titles, and I think the Super Nintendo has that, but to a lesser degree. Mm-hmm. That's why the difference in my score.
All right, moving on to extendability. I actually ninja changed this while we were talking about cost of collecting. I am now giving it a 4. In Super Nintendo. Johnny gave it a 3. Tyler gave it a 2. The reason why I gave it a 4 was I actually like physically turned my head to look at my game room and saw all the just like weird shit that we have for the SNES to collect. And because so the thing that could have weighed it down is the lack of like a quote unquote official bootleg things like Super Noah's Ark and stuff like that. There's only a couple things for the SNES, but there's cool competition carts, and there's like gigantic big box European games, and like if you want, like there's a shitload of Super Nintendo fan translation carts if that's your thing, and it might not be your thing if you're Tyler, but like
we're talking about collectible games here, Steph.
There's a you can collect them, Tyler. There's a decent, and certainly like Super Famicom is strong from a collectability standpoint. Like, especially like if we're talking about like better box art, hands down, like the Super Famicom almost always has better box art than its US counterpart. So, and honestly, I think the form factor of those boxes are actually cooler. So like, there are a lot of Super Nintendo collectors who go pretty deep into Super Famicom. So that's why I got a 4 from me. Johnny.
I'm only dinging it just because I think the realm in which you can collect is really just, there's no like unlicensed. I think the homebrew scene is a little light. Yes, there are a bunch of fan translations that you can get, and there's like cool stuff like that you can go find that's custom to the Super Nintendo. I just think it's kind of limited to where it is. Not that there isn't cool stuff, not that you can't go deep in other regions, because I am, but I also know I'm fairly biased, so I was trying to get to some objectivity, saying, well, you can only really do too much, and there isn't like a lot of hardware variants you can buy. There's not like cool controllers, so I just like, there isn't too much extra. Yeah, you can get the stickers on the box and the Super Nintendo Mini, but there's not that much, and they're not that interesting. So that's why I brought it down a little bit.
I'm thinking about raising mine from a 2 to a 3. I totally forgot about the competition carts and like Max and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
they're cool.
I mean,
cool
they're
stuff.
Cool. All right.
It?
I'll go up to a 3, which, isn't like the best rating ever, but I do. Yeah, those are cool. But like, there's not a lot of Super Nintendo homebrew compared to most other things, and Super Famicom, like, I consider that its own thing. I know we're supposed to be counting the other region games, but I'm just kind of not as much. And I don't think a ton of Super Nintendo collectors finish their set and then go explore Super Famicom. What I see probably 90% more often is people go get Super Mario World and Super Metroid and just all the same iconic games just from the Japanese region, either because they're cheaper or they like the box art or whatever.
Yep, you can still buy Mario World cheap.
That's generally what I do.
$5.
Like, I have like all my favorite games. Like the Lost Vikings box art for Super Famicom, by the way, is bananas. But yeah, I that's like that's like my convention buy. I know this group knows, but like I buy Super Famicom games exclusively at conventions just so I have something to do. Because I'm a fat cat and
even you could get them from Red the Game Shark at cheaper prices, Stefan. Red the Game Shark, hit him up on the Instagram. Tell him what Super Famicom games you want. He probably
or you could go visit him at your local
Mario
convention.
And remember, you get those games cheap.
Yeah, another reason why I felt like I needed to change this is that on the overall ratings, I was rating PS2 at the same rating as Super Nintendo, and that felt bad to me. So,
you're gonna get
so
some
rather
hot
than
takes on
lower
that.
the PS2 score, you raise the SNES score.
Yeah,
I like the logic. Let's move on.
All right, going to Tilt. Bring us home, Johnny. You gave it a 6. Tyler gave it a 6. I gave it a 7.
I think for all the reasons why I didn't give it pretty like the 6 in iconic titles is kind of where I'm getting. Like, yes, it's historically significant, but the Nintendo was there first. It's kind of the box quality. I give it a little better. It's very cool. Not a lot of special editions or good controllers. No hardware issues though, really. The Super Nintendo is a tank. Yeah, it's just like, again, it's a 6. It's a great score. I just think because it gets to borrow a lot of the cool factor from the Super Nintendo, that it loses out a little bit. But man, the Super Nintendo controller, one of the best controllers ever made. What a breath of fresh air it is. Like, and this doesn't have to do with the category scoring, but you move from 2 to 6 buttons in a more comfortable form factor, but keeping it roughly the same size. A revelation. What a joy.
Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a 6 just because it's not as cool as NES, and it's not as historically significant as NES, but basically everything else about it is the coolest thing to collect. So 6.
Yep. Fuck you both. It's way cooler. I love the SNES so much. I paint the room I'm sitting in is painted in SNES colors on purpose. I think that the console is gorgeous. I think while yes, the quality of boxes suffers, the form factor and the general look, and especially the look when they're all piled together in mass on your wall. Like uniformity is pretty good compared to a lot of the other consoles, right? I think there's a very scant handful that are not the same form factor, or rather design, so that you don't have to worry about what color side the spine is, and you don't have to worry about separating black box from red box, and all that shit you have to worry about for all these other consoles. Uniformity is pretty good on the SNES, and I even like the cartridge. It's good stuff. Real good.
Yeah, it's real good. The form factor you're talking about, there's only the couple of big box games. Earthbound, like Bomberman Party Edition, Mario Party, Super Game Boy, Lethal Enforcers. And then the only off-color game really is, there's two. Is it like Riddick Bowe and Final Fight Guy?
Yeah, Guy.
Yeah, Final Fight Guy.
Is it Riddick Bowe the one that doesn't have the logo on the side? Is that what I'm thinking of?
No, it's kind of on the side. It's got a white bar in the middle of it, so it disrupts like that all black side panel.
Oh, Maximum Carnage? Question mark. Is that a red box?
No,
I don't think so. But it would be an extendable fun thing to collect.
Red cartridge, and the QVC one is awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, cool. Let's wrap us up. What are our totals there?
Our totals for the SNES, just under a hair under the NES at 109. It feels wrong, Johnny, with both of us in here being SNES stands. I feel like it should be number one.
Johnny rated it lower than the NES.
Yeah. 109 total. Johnny bringing in at 35 of a maximum 49. Tyler a 36, and me a 38.
Wow, can you believe I rated
Tyler
the Super
likes
Nintendo?
the Super Nintendo more than you.
I feel like I fucked up.
With this.
I feel like I made a mistake somewhere.
The math is wrong, Johnny. The math is wrong.
Man, what did I do? I don't. How is this possible? I don't know.
You heard it here. Super Nintendo sucks, according to Johnny Iucci. Let's move on to the Sega Genesis.
Wow, that is weird that I rated
it. It is fucking weird.
Did I overcorrect? I think I was scoring and feeling like I was going too hard at like good scores, and then like maybe course corrected too hard the other way.
Where's your real low ones?
Value proposition.
And
I mean, it's only one. It's only 1 point. Like it's still my highest rated two consoles, 36 and 35. Like,
yeah,
I was a harder grader than you guys were.
Cost of collecting and extendability. You are pretty low. I mean, so are we, but
yeah, like let's see. I'm curious what our overall. Yeah, I gave the lowest total on this on average out of everybody
by a lot.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? That I gave it the lowest total.
It's because you're cynical. You have a cold heart.
I'm not cynical. I tend to be an I'm pragmatic, but I usually tend to lean into optimism. Like, people don't believe that, but I'm always the guy who's like, I think we can find a better way. Like, we're going to get a good outcome. Don't worry. I'm also the guy who says everything is shit, but I'm also the guy who says we can make it better. We wrapped
Game
up the
quality for the Sega Genesis. Johnny, you gave it a 5. I gave it a 5, and Stefan gave it a 6. Huge Sega Genesis fan, Stefan.
I am a Sega Genesis
Stefan,
fan.
defend your 6.
Genesis does. Look, man, I just think that they've got some really, really Aladdin for the Genesis. I love a lot of the shooters on that platform. Some great side scroll. It's got some really like that. The top of the Genesis is good, and even like places where it's weak, like RPGs, like they still have a couple really great RPGs. So like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like even the underrepresented category is like what's there is good.
I'm changing my score to a 4.
I was thinking about changing my score to a 4 after that too.
Yeah.
You actually are. Whoa. All right, Johnny. Why are you changing your score to a 4?
I had it at 5, but after just kind of going through it, I was like, you know what? There are too many games that feel the same on the Genesis to me, or just games that look so, And this isn't fair necessarily, but I just look, I'm like, I have no interest in playing you. Nothing about this or the box cover, anything is making me want to play. Also, the 3-button controller to start out with is an abomination. And when I thought of that, and I thought about what that did to the quality of the games, I had to lower it a point.
Toe Jam and Earl's a roguelike, man. That's all I gotta say.
Toe Jam and Earl, absolutely a roguelike. I'm lowering mine to a 4 too. I don't think Genesis games are bad, but I'm looking through some Sega Genesis games and I'm just like, oh, Sonic 2. I like Super Mario World better than Sonic 2. Oh, Shinobi. I like Ninja Gaiden better than Shinobi. And there's all these games where I'm like, oh, this is good, but I like what Nintendo has more. Like Castlevania Bloodlines is a great game. I like probably 4 Castlevania games on Nintendo platforms more than Bloodlines. Well, like Contra Hardcore, great game. I still like Contra and Super C better than and Contra 3. I like 3 Contra games better than Contra Hardcore.
I mean, but I think it still works for me. Like, considering I gave the Super Nintendo 7, and yes, Genesis games are good, but I'd rather play Super Nintendo stuff. But I'd much rather play most Genesis stuff than NES stuff. Sorry.
Look, Genesis is still amazing. I know it sounds harsh, but Genesis is still an amazing console. But I'm comfortable with my 4.
Even if you put 4 for the NES as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I'm a little biased here from my personal preference of I like the 8-bit style a whole lot more than the 16-bit style. I think just 16-bit stuff the sprites are too big, man. You just gotta trim those sprites down.
There's no such thing as too big sprites.
Get rid of the only game that I like that has big sprites is Punch-Out. That's it. I think it's amazing how big the sprites are in Punch-Out. Every other game, give me a nice little tiny guy with a small hitbox. That's what I want.
Yep, that's why the Neo Geo is so amazing.
All right,
gigantic ass sprites.
Game variety, guys. Everyone gave this a 4. Stefan, defend your 4.
Yeah, I think Johnny actually brought this up in game quality. There's a whole lot of sameness on Genesis.
Johnny, you want to lower this to a 3 then?
No, I think 4 is still fine.
Do you want to raise game variety to a 5?
No.
So yeah, man. I mean, like I said, quality is good. I'm happy with my 6 in game quality, but there's a lot of games that are real samey, except for Toe Jam and Earl. Stands alone. Toe Jam and Earl stands alone.
Toe Jam and Earl is great, but it does not a whole console make. And the Genesis has a large library of games, over 700 of them. And the variety for 700 games just feels a little bit lacking.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, and I'm kind of there with you. I think everything I think of on Genesis that I want to play feels really arcadey, feels like a really single session game. I can't think of a lot of games that have a save battery that I'd want to play on a Sega Genesis. And as a kid, I owned nothing. I don't think I owned a single game that had a save battery. They were all just single session arcade style games.
Yeah, honestly, I can't even think off the top of my head of a Genesis game with a save battery.
Yeah,
I'm sure
right?
there are.
I think that limits its appeal to certain players. Iconic titles. Johnny gave it a 4. I gave it a 4. Stefan gave it a 5. Again, Stefan overrating the Sega Genesis. Stefan, defend your 5.
Motherfucking Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know. I don't know what you want. That Sonic is what put it. They're making movies this year of Sonic, that are actually pretty decent movies.
There's better Sonic movies than Mario movies.
Yeah, that's right. There sure are.
Oh man, I wish I had seen the Sonic movies to debate that, because I love the Super Mario Brothers movie.
That doesn't mean you're right.
Sonic is also appearing in not Sonic movies this year.
Oh my god, it's so good in Rescue Rangers.
Yep. I wasn't gonna spoil it, Johnny. I don't know if that was a spoiler or not.
Oh god, it was so good. I laughed so hard.
It's so good. Fuck.
Oh, I watched it this afternoon.
Okay. All right.
Don't wait, hold on. I'm only 30 minutes in and I had to stop because I had to work with Tyler. But
okay, so just one thing I want to say about Rescue Rangers, because I fucking love it. But so Rescue Rangers, not at all the movie that I originally wanted. In if you were hey, Stefan, what do you want a Rescue Rangers movie to be like? This is not at all what I would have never arrived at what we have been delivered. But Rescue Rangers is a gift from God.
I can't speak to the overall, but the Sonic scene was so. I was not prepared. I was not prepared for what happened to me. I laughed. I'm not usually I'm not an out loud laugher at movies. I'm normally a small chuckle smile kind of guy. But I had to pause the movie. Carly Carly thought it was delightful how much that scene got me.
I have like a mad respect, especially working in the games industry. I have a mad respect for like the pain in the ass that was the licensing for this movie. There's so much like shit that like isn't owned by Disney, for instance, that is just in this movie. It's so crazy. So good.
I wonder if they were just leveraging the stuff they had got from Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, I don't know. So good though. God.
Yeah, I haven't completed it yet, but yeah, that scene that's a top tier scene. That was really just the lean in was so good. That's all I'll say. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tyler. I know we totally derailed that.
Oh, it's fine. Let me talk about why Sonic the Hedgehog doesn't make the Sega Genesis a 5. It's because it's one franchise. And let me talk about like the 12 games that I said just like out of nowhere on the Super Nintendo. And when you think of Genesis, you're like, oh yeah, Sonic. And then it's like, I guess, I don't know, Shinobi 3, I guess.
I'm like F-117.
Right, yeah. I mean, like, there are obviously, Vector Man. I mean, there are very Sega Genesis games. I mean, yeah. I just think that there are consoles that have clearly more identity than it.
You know what?
I agree with you.
I don't think it's low. I just think it's in the middle.
You know what? Based on this conversation, I'm not lowering my Genesis score. I'm raising my Super Nintendo score.
Yeah, all right, we did something. He's going up from a 6 to a 7 on Super Nintendo.
Shit.
Wow. All right, value proposition for Sega Genesis. Johnny has it at a 4. Me and Stefan put it at a 5. Johnny,
defend your 5, Tyler.
Defend my 5. I'm controlling this conversation, Stefan. Johnny, defend your 4.
I don't think people care enough, and I think some of the nice stuff has room to grow. The curated stuff from Genesis always kind of moves up, but the trash or the stuff that people don't care about, even though they should, because there's a lot of interesting titles on Genesis that don't get a lot of respect, they just aren't there. Like the 4 is actually propped up by some of the bigger titles, and I'm not even calling them iconic titles, just bigger titles. And I think in the end, I don't know how much people care about it. Again, all the Sonic games didn't carry their weight into future consoles. Those aren't great games. Like Sonic didn't become a key franchise and thus raised the Sonic games. Not a lot of key franchises carried on to other systems to like make people have interest in going back and exploring those Genesis titles. There's just not enough carry through.
I think that some of the best games on the Genesis probably aren't crazy expensive. Things like Toe Jam and Earl, things like Sonic 1 through 3, to the point where you should probably, if you don't have Sonic 1 and 2 and 3 and Knuckles, like just buy it now. But also I think that literally of Sega's entire history, what people remember and are going to remember is the Sega Genesis. Like, for whatever reason, even from a historical perspective, everyone, like, Sega Master System gets nothing. 0 credit. No one gives a shit about the Sega Master System. The Genesis is the default thing you think of, and then you think of how they stumbled after the Genesis into oblivion. So I think that
during the Genesis into oblivion.
During the Genesis, they kind of fucked up their brief lead they had over Nintendo. But yeah, I think it's basically, it's Sega's most important thing they ever did. So I think that means a lot in terms of looking back on it. Stefan, do you have anything to say about your 5?
Yeah, so I think, because is this where we were talking about like the quality of boxes factoring in? Because like that's
nope. We're just talking about whether it will be the same price or more expensive.
Okay,
in the future.
but I also feel like that this factors into a little bit to value proposition because it's easy to keep a Genesis game nice.
I don't. I disagree.
Except for the paper.
The manual gets dinged every time you open it. If you're in any kind of humid climate, that paper gets wrinkly. It also slides. It slides around. The paper stock isn't thick enough to allow the case. Like, the case is a good idea, but that paper isn't. You're not going to get, if like you're talking about investment and especially talking about value, you can't take those in and grade them well. I don't know how much pressing does for those or like how you get around that. But yeah, I just find them sliding around and what it does to the manual, not great. Also, the clips a lot of times rub on the top label, which I don't like. because on some of the cases where they put the clips, yeah. And the cardboard boxes are atrocious.
Fuck, you're incepting me to like change this to a 4.
It's value. We're not talking about the tilt here. Because if there's more bad condition games, then your games have long-term value, don't they? I don't think it matters either way. I think it's a wash. Because there's so many boxes, and so many people don't care about the condition of like.
I just don't think. Again, because I don't think Genesis matters enough, even though it's very important. I just don't think it's going to see like a big spike. Like it's spiked, yeah, but in relativity, it's still kind of cheap, right? That's what we're talking about. It's a long-term value. Will you get your money out? Yeah, but will you grow much? Probably not.
All right.
All right. I just want to say this. I'm wondering if did either of you have a TurboGrafx growing up? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
No.
Okay.
My friend David McCauley did.
So we kind of see TurboGrafx as like the weird other console. I'm wondering if kids who are growing up today, like if you're like 16 years old right now, do they see like Sega Genesis as like, oh, that weird time Sega made a big console? Because they know like the Nintendo history, but like the Sega one is like kind of a weird one. Any value in that? Am I prophesizing anything correct here?
I don't think so.
Okay, never mind.
Because I don't think they think of it. I don't think they think of it at all.
Cut all that.
We need to get like someone. Is there a college freshman listening to this show? Tell us what you think about video games. Only because I don't know the logistics of getting a minor on the show.
I don't know. Go read a Reddit forum.
Boom, you got him. You got Reddit. Cost of collecting. We all put this at a 4, and I'm gonna say that's because complete in-box games are easy to find, and even though the game prices have increased a lot, the prices on Sega stuff haven't been as bad as iconic Nintendo stuff, which kind of puts it in the middle of the road for all of us. Do any of you have any different opinions on that?
No.
Extendability. What you could do after completing a set. I've got it at a 4, Johnny at a 3, and Stefan at a 5? Oh, okay. All right. Stefan, explain it.
There's just like when I was talking about like the homebrew scene, and not just homebrew, but just like people making like weird carts and stuff, like the Christmas Sonic ROM with the like Christmas lights in it and shit. Like I understand they also do that on the NES, but there's fun stuff to collect on the Genesis, and of course there are a couple weird competition things, and hell, Johnny's got a couple things sitting on his shelf that I'm kind of envious of that certainly aren't part of the set. So yeah, I'm comfortable with my 5.
Your 5 because of like weird bootleg stuff is the worst justification ever. Let me bring up
for
the
extendability
32X and the Sega CD, two like subsets that you could consider part of the Genesis, but they're like very clearly the next place to go if you complete a Genesis set. And then there's like the Blockbuster flash cards.
Tyler, forgive me for not including other consoles.
They're not consoles. They're add-ons to an existing console.
Sure.
You know what another console is? There was this weird console they made called the Heartbeat Personal Trainer. It's a completely different console from the Sega Genesis.
I'm not letting you do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the 32X and the Sega CD alone is so much, and then there's a little bit like there's the Blockbuster stuff. There's like New Leaf carts, Blockbuster World Championships. If you're like one of the coolest collectors on the planet, which you're probably not, but Johnny is. Even after all of that, Johnny, you're giving us a 3.
Yeah, because I don't think there is a lot to do, and I'm wondering if I should lower it to a 2 or raise my Super Nintendo to a 4. I don't know what the right answer is, because I feel like it's worse than the Super Nintendo in extendability. Yeah, you can get into cardboard box variants, which I did, but you don't have to. Yeah, you can, and I don't think that's reasonable for people to do. There's a lot of like weird subsets into like player's choice style stuff, but there isn't a lot of translations. And yeah, you can go into other regions, but I think more likely you just collect Mega Drive stuff rather than buying a few Mega Drive games. Or like maybe you buy a few, but you don't go as hard as like, say, people who collect Super Nintendo into other regions. Yeah, what do you guys think? Should I lower it to a 2 or raise Super Nintendo to a 4 or just keep it where it is? Is it comparable to Super Nintendo?
I was thinking you should raise the SNES only because like when I was thinking about you were talking about Mega Drive, and like I think there are like the people who do Super Famicom go harder than like the Mega Drive people, and I just feel like there's like there's less cool like Mega Drive like territory specific stuff for the Mega Drive than there is for the Super Famicom.
I mean, there's some pretty cool games. Like there are some like really good games for Mega Drive, and I have a few that like got crossed over like when I was early in collecting, buying stuff that I wouldn't buy now. But yeah, I don't know. And there is like a homebrew scene that's greater than Super Nintendo, like all the stuff Watermelon did, and like you get your Beggar Princes and all that out there. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about it. I'm comfortable with my 3 for the moment, but I may change Super Nintendo to a 4.
All right, Tilt for the Sega Genesis. Johnny, you have a 4. I have a 4. Stefan, you have a 5. Stefan, why do you think the Sega Genesis is so cool? Why are you overrating the Sega Genesis more than all of us?
The Menacer. No, although the Menacer is pretty cool. I honestly I love the console itself. I think is a fantastic, especially the original Model 1 Genesis is beautiful. I also like clamshell, like hard shell, like the hard clamshells. I like those boxes quite a bit. I think they look great when they're on a shelf. I even like the black box Genesis like grid pattern like is very nostalgic to me. I think there's some great cool stuff.
You're making me reconsider, but I'm going to stick at a 4. I think Genesis is pretty cool. It's got like a little bit of it's got a lot of historical significance, but its historical significance is mainly that it made Nintendo way better, which is like, okay. So it's basically also linked to Nintendo. Everything's linked to Nintendo. Everyone wants Nintendo games. The fact that it's not Nintendo clearly dings it. The boxes I think are kind of a pain in the ass.
There's a mail-away glove and a mail-away Star Trek figure.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Good stuff.
I think like all the different sizes and types of boxes are a little bit of a pain in the ass. I don't like that I have to constantly reorganize my boxes because I can't figure out what looks the best. Like I got all my white box EA Sports games over here, and then my red box games and my black box games, and then there's a whole set of Sega Genesis boxes that are both black and red on the spine, like Shadow of the Beast, I think is one of them. And I try to put those in between my black and red boxes, and it's just like there's so much organizing to do.
And like the like Taito boxes that don't really fit anywhere,
and some are cardboard, and then the cardboard ones, there are just cardboard ones, and then there are cardboard ones that are red, so it's like you can't just put all the cardboard ones together because it feels like the red ones belong with the red ones. Anyway, I middle of the road for me. If it was all cardboard boxes, I think it would be cooler.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that, Tyler. Like, just organizing the Genesis collection is a pain in the ass. And the consistency is so bad.
I made Johnny do it.
Yeah. Also, controller, the croissant controller 3-button is just a terrible thing. I went into my problems with the box. There are some better special editions. But yeah, you just get dinged a big cool factor trying to figure out how to do anything with the Genesis stuff. And also like all the EA games being like consistent just make for like this one ugly section that you're just like, those are my bad games. Cool. Like here's a wall of bad games. And the inconsistency is actually too pronounced. They're like, it's too much. And so you get these blocks and you're like, ugh, Look at all the inconsistency. So like, if it was like a few games here and there, like you'd be like, all right, whatever. There's some cool stuff. It's still like a good score, It is cool. The Genesis is cool, but I'm talking about why I'm dinging it. So that controller also plays a big factor to me. I hate that 3-button controller so much. I can't. Can anyone defend the 3-button controller? Is it just the worst controller ever made?
I like the size. I would honestly, I'd love if the 6-button controller didn't get smaller. Like if it was just if they literally just put 3 more buttons on.
Do you like the Duke?
You know what? I don't hate the Duke, but maybe I have big manly hands. I don't know.
Yeah, I have tiny little girl hands.
No, Johnny, you're right. The 3-button controller is absolute garbage. But you see, the other side of that is I think that the Japanese controller is one of the best controllers, I think, for playing older games. Probably not as good as just like a Super Nintendo controller. But the Japanese controller, a little bit smaller than the 6-button controller. It was released in America as the Sega Club Kids controller. That controller is awesome.
Well,
So
also,
that
Johnny,
cancels out.
you can take that three. You can take. I mean, you can take the 6-button controller too, but you can take that 3-button controller, plug it right into your 2600. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, what you're playing? Johnny. Are you playing Atari games with an Atari joystick? No.
Like a
the
sucker?
answer is you're not playing Atari games. I know. All right.
Wait, you can seriously do that?
Yes.
Huh.
You just use the A button as the button. It's amazing technology.
I did not know that.
You need to go replay Atari game. Are you kidding me? I haven't played an Atari game with a joystick in like probably 20 years.
Huh. I did not expect to learn something.
Yeah, hey everybody, you can plug a 3-button or 6-button Genesis controller into a 2600 and play your 2600 games.
Yeah, but good luck plugging your 2600 into a TV.
You could do it with a Commodore 64 too, although there is some kind of electrical you could like break something if you do that, so you can get a special adapter that prevents you from breaking your Commodore.
Sweet.
Anyway, out of a max of 147 points, we gave the Sega Genesis a total of 90. Johnny gave it a 27, I gave it a 29, Stefan gave it a 34. Stefan way overrating the Sega Genesis.
Not
All right.
true.
Let's go on to the PS1, Johnny. And maybe let's pick up the pace a little bit because we're an hour and 45 minutes into this.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we don't have to debate so hard in between each category. Okay, so PS1 coming at you strong. Game quality. I'm giving this a 7. Tyler gives it a 6. Stefan, you give it a 5. Stefan, why don't you tell me why you're a 5?
Just on the amount of shovelware. Again, the library is so fucking huge on the PS1, and there's just so much garbage. Like, I feel like the 16 to the 32-bit generation was like when even like mass market licensed garbage was still like trying to be art. And then, like, in the PS1 generation, it was just like, nope, this is just garbage. We're just gonna phone this shit in. So yeah, I think there's just like a glut of shovelware on the PS1.
Are you considering games like Skydiving Extreme Shovelware? Because my friend Game Dash Rave on YouTube has a bone to pick with you.
So I think maybe my 7 is too generous. Maybe it should be a 6. But the PS1, I didn't put it maybe into the right historical context when I was thinking about it. But a lot of those games were just... the PS1 stole people from Nintendo because of their games, right? Like, oh my God, these games are so good, you have to go buy a PlayStation 1 and fuck Nintendo. So that was kind of the factor for me, that it did that to people en masse, and then it became the dominant console. But is kind of where I came up with this score.
How much do you think, and I know we're trying to debate less, but how much do you think of that came down to like 3D being the future, like as far as like the people that it poached?
There's still a lot of fine 2D games on there, but the 3D is the future a little bit. I mean, Nintendo was doing 3D as well at the same time. It's not like the N64 was just trying to be, sprites.
Yeah. When did the N64 come out in relation to the PS1's launch?
I think like a year after. I think it was 96 for the Super Nintendo, 95 for PlayStation. I could have that backwards. Anyways.
Are you sure? I thought they both came out in 95. But you know what?
Did they? I don't know. They could.
Someone look it up. Someone knows more than this.
It was the end of high school for me. That's what I remember. So it was 95, 96 for both of them. But I thought the PlayStation was out first. But I could be wrong.
I think you're right.
All right. I'll defend my 6. I mean, PlayStation games are obviously killer. The one thing that prevents it from being a 7 is some of the 3D games are a little janky just because it's the first era of 3D, and I really hate how this was the generation where we moved to 3D and we had decades of games being 60 frames a second, and here's where we decided that I guess 20 to 30 should be okay, and that still is plaguing games today, and I really fucking hate that.
Johnny, we were we were all wrong. The PlayStation launched December 3rd, 1994.
In Japan?
And N64 launched June 23rd, 1996.
Who launches a console in June?
Get all those kids just getting out of school for the summer. Anyways, let's see. Going to game variety, I have this as a 7 again. Maybe it's too high, but you guys have a 6 and a 7 as well. There's a lot of games, and you like finally got rhythm games and everything. If there's a style of game you want to play, you can pretty much do it on the PlayStation.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna change my 6 to a 7 here because my go-tos for a console not having enough variety are: does it have enough rhythm games and does it have enough horror games? And the PS1 not only has those in spades, it's kind of the console that pioneered the genre as we know it today for both of those genres, and it also has just everything else. Like I don't think of PS1 as like, oh, it's the console for great RPGs. It's kind of the console for great everything.
Yeah, this is for me. This is sort of like the stark difference between game quality and game variety, right? Like game quality went down for me because of the glut of games, like a ridiculous amount of games. The library is huge, but at the same time, you have so many games, you're bound to have a lot of variety.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still thinking about changing that score to a 6. It might be right on 6. Anyways, iconic titles. This is where it falls off for me and for you guys. So you guys have 5s and I have a 4. Who wants to go first? Tyler? You want to tell me why you're a 5?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, PlayStation, it has all the franchises. I guess the problem is more that they're franchises. I mean, when you think of PlayStation, you think Metal Gear Solid, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, you think Final Fantasy VII, Gran Turismo. I guess Gran Turismo is its own thing, but also it's a racing game. It's not really like a super great mascot. I realize it's the best-selling PlayStation game, but it's a fucking racing game.
Yeah,
I think it's got...
Tomb Raider started on Saturn?
I mean, yeah, it's got Tomb Raider. It's a multi-platform thing. I think the thing with PlayStation is you look at PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and it's like, oh, I mean, maybe I don't really want a fighting game with all the iconic Sony franchises. I want the Nintendo fighting game. That's kind of PlayStation's problem.
Yeah, and that's where my 4 comes from, is that the idea that some of the most iconic stuff for PlayStation, which is weird, didn't come from the PlayStation 1. Like, if I think of the best PS1 games, or the best PlayStation games, I don't think of the PS1.
You got me. I'm lowering it to a 4 just on how iconic some of the games are.
Okay. Ooh, got a lowered score. Anyways, Stefan, anything you want to add, or can we go on to value proposition?
No, I mean, no, we can go on. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Value proposition, PS1. Man, I come in low on everything. Just so you guys know, I came in low everywhere, except for one where I'm like, maybe I'm too high. Value proposition, I come in at a 3. Tyler comes in at a 7. Stefan, you were at a 4. We're close, but Tyler, you've got some explaining to do.
Yeah, defend yourself, saw.
All right, let me go back to my game quality and variety. 6 for quality, 7 for variety. It is the first Sony console, and what's the most popular console right now? Is it the PlayStation 5? I don't know about the PlayStation versus Xbox debate, but I know there's tons of people growing up on just PlayStation, so we by default go back to NES. All the PlayStation people by default will go back to the PS1, and I think PS1 games are pretty cheap. We were just talking about last episode, Final Fantasy VII is like $40. That game has everything going for it besides how common it is, but there's so many iconic PlayStation games that cost as much or less than just a Switch game would cost you at the store. And I think they're going to be timeless games. I would be buying PlayStation. I think I would put PlayStation 1 in my top 3 consoles of all time, and maybe it's number 1. I don't know.
All right, Stefan, rebuttal.
No, you know what? Tyler's got some really good points. I'm not comfortable in moving my score. Like, I still think, like, I would have said all the things Tyler said and then still given it my 4. But hats off to Tyler for the crisp argument.
So my problem is this, and the counter to Tyler's argument is you said oh, kids are playing it. The PlayStation 1 is old. Kids already played it who are now adults, and they didn't come back. It had the rise, and people still aren't going back in mass. We didn't see that big spike of like the N64, the nostalgia generation that already happened. The PS1 got left out of that. So where are these kids coming from?
Oh, so you're saying it has room to grow, Johnny? Oh,
no, I'm saying it. I'm just saying it didn't. It didn't happen. Like, I think the time for that to happen didn't occur, so it kind of got left, and it stagnated a little bit, and people still don't know what the middle of the PlayStation library is. So, yeah, like, I think the library is actually so big that it hurts the value of collecting it long term. You're going to get some of the best games that go up, but overall, you're going to be squashed by everything else.
Or that means there's still room to go hunt for good deals because people aren't thinking about, the Spider-Man
But you're not
game.
competing against it. It's demand. There's no demand.
But there could be in the future. 7.
No demand.
Invest in PS1.
All right. Cost of collecting. Moving on. So, guys, we gave this all a 6. PlayStation, yeah, this is where Tyler was going. Yes, I think there's room to get in. There isn't any real set killers. You could get the whole library conceivably, and the average cost of game is fairly low. Like, yeah, you can still have a lot of fun at not too much money collecting PS1 games, but you can still get like a few games that are like nice shelf pieces that you shelled out on that like look cool, that make a good Instagram picture. PlayStation is, for its cost, is a great collection, a great system to collect for.
Yeah, just don't buy RPGs or long box games.
No, you should buy it. Those are the things you should be buying. Those are the cool ones you can shell out on.
Warhawk is $8.98. Go get Warhawk. Does that have a small box version?
Wow.
I was trying to think of the most worthless long box game that no one would ever want. Well, and it was Warhawk.
just when I thought we were going to have something to bond over.
He just pulled the rug out. He trolled you on purpose.
I know, he did.
All right. Anyone else got anything to say more than that about PlayStation cost?
Nope.
No, my pride is injured.
I'm sorry. It'll be fine. Extendability, guys. I got a 2 because I rate low. Tyler 3, Stefan 4. Anyone want to take a stab at this? I just don't think there's a lot to do beyond just buying your PS1 games. There's a few like collector stuff, but imports you can get. Like if you're Game Rave, there's a lot to do forever and ever and ever and ever. But I don't think most people are Jason.
Yeah, that's why I got I understand that I rated this the highest, but like that's where it all came for me. Like it is the import scene.
See, you guys are rating the imports really highly. I'm not. I really separate out my import stuff.
Yeah, but where's your aftermarket and homebrew? What's driving?
I'm just thinking of like the greatest hits and like collector's edition stuff, and fuck it, I'm going down to a 2.
There's also fun.
Right.
Wow. There's some like if you wanted to do like magazine
that was it. It's because of magazine demos.
Back up to a 3.
That's like a whole era of things that only exists from like the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, and I think those consoles do benefit from things like magazine demos.
Okay, you're going back to a 3 for the magazine demo?
Or even just magazines. Like, you can't get magazines for consoles after the last issue of Nintendo Power, probably.
I know, but all the consoles we just talked about all had magazines too.
Oh, I know, everything does. I'm just saying, if we did an Xbox Series X thing, the extendability might be 1, because there's literally nothing to collect.
No, it's like, what are you buying games for? Just get Game Pass and enjoy your life.
Yeah. And PlayStation Underground, maybe an iconic demo CD, maybe the most iconic demo CD. Did you just change one of my things? What's going on? What? Okay.
Johnny's taking it upon himself.
Yeah, I'm lowering these scores. Hey, tilt factor. Let's go. We got 4s. Stefan and I, and Tyler, you got a 5. I think we're all pretty close and agree that the PlayStation is pretty cool, but it does have some limitations. Tyler, you want to talk about your 5?
Historical significance in terms of Sony games is all the way there. Box quality, I think a jewel case is the best box. I flip-flop on what I think the best box is, but man, I love how small and easy to store jewel cases are. The only thing that it doesn't get all the way is the cool factor, and a little bit of that is just because it is kind of cheap, so it's not like, wow, you've got all these PlayStation games. It's like, oh, and like 70 of them are Madden games. So there's a little bit of that going on, but yeah, I do think PlayStation's super cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool too. I just felt like 4 is like a good score. Not all the way there. Not bad. Not great. Like, it is pretty cool. It is significant. I don't know if enough people care about it. I do like jewel cases a lot, though they do crack. So that's like your jewel cases are always busted, and replacing them. Yeah, you can do it, but it's not like
Especially
getting
the
an actual
long box jewel
replacement.
cases. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
and those are like kind of fall apart. Controller was good for its time. Yeah, like, yeah, it wasn't a home run for me. It's good, but not great.
DualShock started on PS1 too, right? As
Yep,
well,
it
right?
did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another terrible
Analog
thing
joysticks.
that was started in the PS1 days that we can't shake. Literally, the analog sticks were placed because they're like, I guess we put them at the bottom. And somehow the PS5 still uses the same controller.
Dude, people are still defending that, and I don't understand. It's the bad placement. I don't get it.
DualShock controllers shake all the time, Tyler.
No, the button, the sticks.
I know he said that. He said that it can't shake.
Let's I
I didn't even get the joke.
Thanks, Dad. All right. Anyways, we got a total of 106 here, which is a very good score. We'll talk full rankings later, but I came in at a 33. Stefan's got a 35, and Tyler loves it the most at a 38.
Also, before we go, PS1 startup sound, the best startup sound ever.
Takes too long.
Wow.
Loading times, blue.
Oh man, I should have tilted it down for loading times. I don't even think about those anymore.
Yeah, loading times. Don't want to play it. Cartridges have you beat on that every time.
I will note that my score for PlayStation is the same as my NES score. That's how cool I think PlayStation is.
Wow.
Yeah, well, he did say maybe the best console of all time, and I heartedly disagree. But Tyler also somehow rated Super Nintendo higher than I did, so I don't understand what the hell is going on in this world. Anyways, Stefan, you get to talk about your favorite console, the N64.
Woo! Console for trash people. All right, game quality, zeros across the board. No, we gave the N64, Johnny gave it a 3, Tyler gave it a 3, I gave it a 2 for game quality. I'll go ahead and start this. It's just one of those things where it's like there are, a very small handful of really excellent games, and then there's a glut of either the games that range from completely forgettable to like real bad. And yeah, I don't know if I have more to say on that. It's bad.
No.
Bad stuff.
Tyler, you have anything to add to that?
I guess I agree with that. There's also just that, like, you could point out the great games on any console, but at the same time, my favorite 2 games of all time are N64 games, so I'm not gonna go all the way down to a 2. I do think the Nintendo and Rare stuff does shine really bright. And then there's a lot of wrestling, sports, and racing games. A lot for a small console. A lot.
Yeah, and I'm in the same place. The highs are very high, the lows are very low.
Yeah, and when you only have 196 games, like
296, 296,
What?
297.
is it not 196?
It's 296.
Is it?
Japanese, it's like nothing. There's like 120 Japanese games or something.
All right. Shows you how long ago I collected my N64 set. Cool. So, game variety. Again, if you hadn't figured it out by now, this one's not going to be great either. We gave it 2s across the board for game variety. I think almost for identical reasons in that, like, I don't think Tyler hit the nail on the head. There are a shitload of racing and wrestling games and a handful of good things. But, yeah, just a lot of racing and wrestling.
Johnny, what's your favorite N64 RPG?
Oh, Shadowgate, but that's not really an RPG. Quest 64.
What's your favorite N64 shooter?
Goldeneye.
No, 2D shooter, space shooter. I think there's only one, so there is a correct answer.
It's the hyper one, right?
I'm thinking of Star Soldier. Maybe you could think of another one.
No, Star Soldier. Yeah.
Okay.
Star Soldier.
Yeah,
is probably right.
Yeah, and so I was really close to going 1 just because the variety on N64 is so bad. I have to reserve 1 for things like R-Zone, where there's like literally direct copies of other games that are the same exact game, just with different sprites. So
yeah, like 2 might actually be too harsh, but yeah, I feel good about it.
All right.
It's not too harsh. Iconic titles. This is where things start to pick up a little bit. Johnny gave it a 5. Tyler gave it a 6. I slew it again at a 3. Tyler, defend your 6.
Super Mario 64 sold for $1.56 million.
That does not matter. Oh my god. So yes, it's incredibly iconic to one idiot.
Mario Kart 64 is perpetually more expensive than Super Mario Kart. Like, both of them are, I think, just kind of pretty good games. I think like they're pretty equivalent in quality, but Mario Kart 64 is so much more nostalgic and iconic. Ocarina of Time is kind of the de facto best game ever made. I know there's other choices, but it is.
No.
I mean,
Not the
I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but when you look up like best game ever made and you go find like the shittygamesite.com, they're going to put Ocarina of Time as like number 1 and number 2.
Yes, they do all the time. I disagree, but yeah.
Look, the entire iconic game list for this console is the same game list for like the games that aren't terrible. Like, so you have like the good come on, the good games are the iconic titles.
Smash Brothers started here.
You don't think Smash Brothers is iconic? Like
no, it is.
Yeah,
iconic.
and it's a great game. I'm just saying that like that small handful of games, and like
no. Like it's like also worth the price of admission, right? So you have Smash Brothers, you have GoldenEye, like those are 2 games that people just, and then you have, again, I don't agree with it, but you have Super Mario Brothers 64 and you have Ocarina of Time, which people, 2 of the most iconic games ever, whether I agree with it or not, and I can't believe I have to defend anything on the N64 because it makes me sick to my stomach, but it has name power, and it started some series that have remained relevant today, which not everything carried through. Like, how many Metroids have there been? And I love Metroid so much. And like, what are we on? Mario Party 452? Like, Jesus Christ.
I lowered my score from a 6 to a 5 because
attaboy.
Remembering like how insane the Super Nintendo library is with just iconic games, I don't think the N64 is like 1 notch down from it. I think it's a little bit less than that.
Yeah, I agree. Like I'm still a 5.
All right.
I think a 3 is too low, but
3 is definitely too low. Stefan, go play Ocarina of Time. I'm sorry, go play Super Mario 64 because it's worth over $1 million because that's how iconic it is.
Moving on, value proposition to where that argument actually matters instead of where Tyler decided to talk about it.
Oh, hey, Star Fox is a shooter.
Yeah, Star Fox.
What I said, 2D shooter though.
Good stuff.
Oh, okay.
So we value proposition. We give it 4s across the board. I think also we should remember for value proposition and for cost of collecting, we are not really, at least Tyler and I were not talking about sealed graded games in which that $1.6 million Mario 64 would matter. So yeah, 4s across the board. Who wants to start with that?
No, I think it's kind of self-explanatory. You look, there's potential to grow. There is value, especially because they've got so many iconic titles, and people are really high. Like, there's a generation that just loves this console so much. So and those people are gaining more money right now. So yeah, I think there's room to grow on the price of those games somehow. But yeah, I think you're fine if you're buying N64 box games. But I would maintain buying either card only or nice box. I wouldn't middle around with like bad box games.
Tyler, anything to add, or can we move on?
No. I mean, I'm debating moving to a 5 just because, like, I think even if it's $90 or whatever, you should probably buy Super Mario 64. I don't care how common it is. I do think it will be desired forever as just a collectible game.
Forever, ever.
But it's not the most important thing to put your money into. All right.
Cost of collecting. Johnny gave it a 4. Tyler gave it a 3. I gave it a 4. Tyler, defend your 3.
I don't know, man. Some of those rare games are expensive, right? How much does Banjo-Tooie cost right now? I'm talking about like
GoldenEye is $100.
Is that a lot or a little, according to you?
A lot.
Yeah, I mean,
when did that it was $10 forever. Forever.
Yeah.
I mean, considering how common that is, let's see, like what Banjo-Tooie looks like it's around $150. I think N64 games are expensive, and part of that comes from just the conditional rarity of the boxes are easy to damage. But what, should I raise it up? I don't know. I feel like I want to be in with the 4s on you guys.
I'm just double checking, right? GoldenEye did sell for $100. I'm not crazy. I did see one sell for $100.
100% correct. So come down to a 3. Come on, it's not all green pastures and N64. It's pretty expensive out there, Johnny. Come on, lower that score. Well, come to a 3. Let's go.
No.
All right, I'm sticking by my 3. I think if you asked, gun to my head, if you asked me if N64 is like okay or a little bit expensive, I would err on the side of expensive.
Just for clarity, Tyler, you are saying that N64 is as expensive to collect as NES.
Yes.
You are bananas.
Because I think in terms of the games you would want to collect, I think there are plenty of NES games that you're going to spend, less than $75 on, and I don't think there are a lot of those games you'll find on N64 because everyone wants the same fucking 20 games on N64.
You are allowed to have your terrible take. Moving on to extendability. 2s across the board. Not a lot of love out there for the N64, and as far as diverging, and the Technicolor fucking consoles and controllers. Like I almost want to bring it up to a 3 myself because there's so many and there's Nintendo Power N64 controller stuff. There I don't know.
There's the Pikachu console. There's all these.
The Pikachu console is fucking awesome.
But yeah, for me that went into cool factor. I mean, extendability. Should we have moved that kind of stuff into extendability? Is that real? I was thinking more of the extendability of the games, like how you collect the games. But yeah, I think we can say overall in the system. So maybe we need to rethink whether we have that in the right area.
Also, I don't know that special editions and variants are necessarily the same thing for consoles.
No, special editions and variants aren't the same thing.
Yeah. So I think there's room for that conversation, similar conversations in both tilt and extendability. Yeah, I'm going to put this on 3.
Is it because you were thinking of the SharkWire Online, the keyboard and little Game Shark adapter that lets you download codes from the internet?
Sure.
Okay. I had a save search for that for 5 years, never found one.
All right, anybody else want to say anything else on extendability for the N64? Moving on to tilt. Johnny gave it a 2. Tyler gave it a 3. I also gave it a 3. Johnny, defend your 2.
I just don't, I think I'm drinking. I think it's too much haterade. I should probably just move up to a 3. There is some good stuff to buy on it. I just don't think it's cool, and that's my problem. I don't think it's cool, and we're talking about cool factor, but people love it. People love the form factor. People love the controller, and I don't like any of those things about it. I don't like the way the console looks. I don't like the feel of the controller. I don't like the special editions. It is significant that Nintendo made a huge blunder in not going to disc systems, so it's got a lot of significance there. Yeah, I'm going to move mine up. I'm going to move mine up to a 3, but I still don't love that.
Yeah, I mean, most of my tilt just comes from, I'd say the cool factor is the number one thing that factors into my tilt. How cool do I think it is in general? And yes, it has cartridges. Yes, it's a Nintendo console that comes in boxes, which is the last Nintendo console coming in boxes, not counting GBA. But other than that, if you show me 264 games, I'm like, half of those definitely don't matter. So there's a lot of that.
More than half.
I'm being nice.
Yeah, how'd we total out?
Totaling out at 66, not a good score. Johnny with a 23, Tyler with a 22, and me with a 21.
How did I like the N64 more than you guys?
The math is bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I think so. Johnny likes the Super Nintendo the least, and the N64 the most out of anyone on Collector's Quest in terms of how good it is to collect. Perfect. I love this episode.
Oh my god, what is happening? I need to go lower my scores. It was fine when we were the same,
No,
Tyler,
the
but I
whole
raised that
point
one
of-
score.
The whole point of the categories is that we're not just ranking it willy-nilly.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, let's go on. Saturn, Tyler, that's you, buddy.
Oh, it's me. All right, Saturn game quality. Johnny, you gave it a 3. I gave it a 3. Stefan gave it a 4. Stefan, are you about to overrate all the Sega consoles? Why don't you defend your 4?
I just think that there's a slice of high quality Saturn titles that I like a lot. I do think Panzer Dragoon and Panzer Dragoon Saga are great games. They do have some really interesting Japanese RPGs that they ported over. It also happens to be like all the good stuff is the horrendously expensive stuff on the console, which is frustrating. But I think there's I think there are more good Saturn games than there are N64 games. Changed my mind.
I think you're definitely wrong, but okay. I don't want to be too much of a Saturn hater here. Do you want me to talk about how much I hate the Saturn arcade ports from Sega?
No.
Yeah. I think Panzer Dragoon is fine. I think Panzer Dragoon Saga is overrated. I think Nights into Dreams is fine. I think like the most iconic Saturn stuff I think is like fine. I mean, I'm not going to count things like imports like Radiant Silvergun, which I think is awesome. Saturn Bomberman is fine. I honestly like Bomberman 64 better. I'm going to be the only one with that opinion. Sonic R is fine. Virtual Cop is fine. I think Saturn has a lot of fine games. And then when you get into the dregs of it, there's a lot of the weird 3D transition era games that don't hold up. So that's where I'm at on Saturn's quality.
Fair. All right, move us on then. It's your show.
Game variety. Me and Johnny gave it a 3. Stefan, again, overrating it with a 4. Stefan, how much variety do you think there is on Saturn?
More than N64. Suck it. I don't know. Like, I mean, certainly, I think if I have Atari 2600 at a 3, right? Like Saturn has more variety than 2600, and yeah, I think
I disagree with that.
No, I'm. You know what? I'm comfortable with my 4. I'm gonna stay there. I don't care what you say.
All right. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of like gimme stuff. Like, I mean, technically, yes, it has variety because it has like Duke Nukem and Quake and Power Slave.
And Tomb Raider and Resident Evil.
No, I'm just saying like those are all first person shooters. And it's like, yes, those exist. But also, am I ever going to play fucking Quake on the Sega Saturn? It's just kind of like checking a checkbox like, oh yeah, we've got first person shooters. But no one is playing first-person shooters on the Sega Saturn, so it feels like it almost doesn't.
Man.
Doom is on the Sega Saturn too. What the fuck?
2 Mega Man games. 2 Mega Man games.
Yeah,
Marvel
they
vs.
got some horror games on there. You got Big D. It's the biggest D. No, it's the second biggest D. Now I'm thinking about it.
What D2 is the biggest D?
No, 3DOD is the.
All right, I'm
D.
sticking by my 3.
That's fine. It's fine.
All right. Iconic titles. How many mascots, major licenses, and exclusive? Johnny with the big 1 for the Sega Saturn.
The only one out there, and I like Saturn more than both these guys.
Me and Stefan with the 2. Johnny, 1. Not even Panzer Dragoon is going to count as an iconic Sega Saturn.
It's not
game?
yeah, one iconic title, and that's the game everyone wants to go talk about.
Knights was iconic enough that they made another one on the Nintendo Wii.
2. There's 2 games.
That's more
2
than,
out of how many?
It's more than the Sega Genesis.
But look, Sega is synonymous with Sonic, and if you can't point to a Sonic game on your Sega system, you failed.
Sonic R, done.
Nope. No, I'm saying it's there, but it's not iconic.
Also, Johnny, according to this list, I do like Saturn more than you like Saturn.
I know. We'll get to that. Everybody likes everything more than me. I don't like things. Apparently, is the thrust of this episode.
Daytona, not even Daytona.
No,
I know it's an arcade port, and it sucks.
So but
people think about it with Sega Saturn because it was so common.
Didn't come here. Yeah, but they have to think about something when they think of the Saturn.
That is a great point. I'm not going down to a 1. I do think Panzer Dragoon and Knights alone save it from being a 1.
Yeah. Like, and I like the Saturn a lot. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in there. Like, Shining Force 3 is there. That's worth the price of admission for me. But yeah, I just don't think it does a lot.
Value proposition. Johnny with the 3, me with the 3, Stefan with a 5 on the long-term value of the Sega Saturn. Stefan, what are you talking about?
No. Long-term value proposition, one of the contributing factors being long-term value.
Okay.
I do think there's potential to grow. And I honestly did, going back to the one that we have not really covered a lot, the when you put your money in, can you get it out? And like I got in and out of Saturn relatively quickly and did very, very well. So, and that was not very long ago. So yeah.
But we're talking about if you bought it now in the future, because you did that during like the period where it would have been the easiest to do that with literally any game on the face of planet Earth.
No, I stick with it. I still think there's between the potential to grow and being able to get back out what you put in, as long as you aren't trying to. The sealed graded seems to be not the place for you to be in Saturn right now, but there's still. I think there's room to grow, and I think there's you can it is at least holding the value.
All right, I think Saturn has some of that rarity built in, which I think will keep prices, I don't think it's the worst thing you could buy. I just don't know how many people in the future who don't care about Sega Saturn will ever care about something like a stall. Like who in the future is going to look back and be like, yeah, I got to own an Astal. Like maybe they'll come back and they'll look at all these lists and they'll pick up the Dragon Forces and the Panzer Dragoons. But the system as a whole, I think, is full of a bunch of dead weight. That is pretty expensive. Johnny?
I agree. We gave it the same score, man. It's just
okay.
not a lot to do there.
Cost of collecting Sega Saturn. All of us gave it a 2. I'm going to say it's because Sega Saturn is expensive. Do we really have anything else to say about that?
Nope. It is expensive. It's been expensive. It's expensive.
Yeah, it's like the N64, except like some of the iconic games cost even more money.
Yeah,
so I feel like the floor is higher too. Am I making that up? It's just a gut feeling I have that
I don't know if the floor is higher, but you just don't feel as good about it because it has less iconic titles is my big problem with it. That's like you're paying a lot for stuff that isn't necessarily iconic or isn't a port on another system. And the cost of it, yes, it's expensive. And the stuff you're going to buy, like even if you look at the averages, the stuff you are going to buy if you want to have the good stuff for the Saturn, which is the stuff you should be buying for it anyways, is all very expensive. So you're just costed into that if you want to be buying. It's an expensive system to be buying into in a world where everything is expensive.
Extendability of the Sega Saturn, all of us gave it a 2. Stefan, you've been rating the imports really highly, so why are you giving Saturn a 2 here?
Well, because that's like the only thing that there is, really. That's it.
That's kind of where I'm at. So to be clear, I don't think that the Saturn import library is a 2, but literally that is the only place to go. Johnny, you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I'm changing my score to a 3 because I think, I'm bumping it up actually because of the region thing, because I think a lot of people go so hard at import Saturn stuff, and I think that like improves the library so vastly that it's worth being a 3 by itself just to explore beyond your region. There isn't a lot of homebrew or aftermarket anything. I just think going beyond what's available, and now I think as we have more systems able to play disc-based games for us now, like more retro systems coming out, that the Saturn is, going to be more viable to get into those. So
Tyler,
check it out.
How many people do you think that have full sets or near full sets of Saturn also have a copy of Radiant Silvergun?
Everyone?
I don't.
Are you you don't own a copy of Radiant Silvergun?
Dude, anybody who's anybody has a copy of Radiant Silvergun.
I want to own a copy, to be clear. I just never pulled the trigger on
it. Talk about a game that we're probably going to put in like the Games for Video Game Collectors episode. And I realize it's kind of lost some of its cachet now, but man, like 15 years ago, that was one of the games to have.
Yeah, that was the fancy import. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Tilt for the Sega Saturn. Johnny with the 5, Tyler with the 3, and Stefan with the 4. Johnny, you do think the Sega Saturn is cool after all.
I do. And again, part of it, the import scene. I also think like the big wall of white consistent cases looks great. It's got a pretty good gun if you want to play a gun game. It just like, it looks good on the shelf. It's cool. And I'm not talking about just the quality of the games or iconic titles. I'm just saying when you look at it as a set or just like a couple of games on the shelf, they look cool. They do just look cool. And I think thinking about the imports, yeah. And the box is cool when they're nice. Yeah, it's just, it's cool. That's all I got. I think it's a very cool system to have on the shelf.
Yeah, I think it's real pretty. Also, the twin sticks, chef's kiss. Just chef's kiss. But yeah, I love seeing, I think as far as aesthetically pleasing, like when I was piecing out all, like most of my sets, like that was the one that I like almost didn't get rid of purely from the aesthetics. Like, it's just like, it's just cool looking. Just looks fancy. They're all shiny, and as long as they're not all cracked up, the cases are cool. And to Johnny's point, they're very uniform and good stuff.
I think the Sega Saturn might be the console that is most overrated by collectors. I think that it gets too much cool factor for being expensive, and that contributes to it being expensive as like a feedback loop, because I think the fundamental coolness of the average Sega Saturn game is not very high, as evidenced by our low scores for things like how many iconic games are actually on the Sega Saturn. So I do think it has some coolness factor, but I do think it's pretty.
But the imports are also very cool.
I'm not really counting that. I
know, but I'm just saying
I'm also
that makes
not
it cool
like
for
super
me.
familiar with the import libraries of all the consoles we're talking about. So
Okay.
Also, though there are not very many variants, they are very aesthetically pleasing console. I think it looks good. It's a good looking.
get those Working Designs logo facing out. Let everyone know how cool you are for having a lot of pink logos.
Yeah, and make sure you group them together, because God, you do not alphabetize when you have Working Designs games.
Oh yeah, of course.
Just like all your Taito
do.
stuff on Genesis has to go together.
I mean, you do alphabetize your Working Design games on their own separate shelf and put a little light on them.
And absolutely make sure they're first.
Do you put a stall where a stall is supposed to go, or do you put it first because it has no logo? To be clear, if anyone doesn't know, a stall, the spine of the case doesn't say a stall on it. It just says blank for some reason. I mean, I guess it's an error, but good stuff. Anyway, Sega Saturn is our lowest console of the day with a 61 total. Johnny gave it a 20. I gave it 18, and Stefan gave it a 23.
I am uncomfortable with it being that much lower than the N64.
Is it that much lower? It's only 5 lower than the N64
points.
on a 147-point scale.
But you have it 2 points higher than the N64, Stefan.
You're good. Don't worry about
All
it.
right.
Your personal opinion has been reflected.
All right.
Yeah, that's Sega Saturn. I mean, it's the lowest, but the lowest of what we thought might be the most collectible consoles. So, Johnny, we can go on to you.
Bring it home,
All right.
Johnny.
PlayStation 2, a system I rated too lowly. Somehow. I don't like, I was just like, I'm jumping ahead, but man,
Johnny
what did I do?
hates PS2.
I do. No, PS2 is great. It's a great system. Game quality. Guys, we gave it a 6 across the board because it's got a lot of amazing games.
So good.
Yeah, so good. It's got a huge library. It has to have a lot of good games, like the volume of it alone.
Yeah.
Just like the Nintendo Wii, we would definitely give a 6 to.
No.
I might give it a 5. I might give the Wii a 5.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think so. The PS2 is more of a 7 that I've put down to a 6, and the Wii might be a 4 that bumps up to a 5 because of how many good Nintendo games there are. The only reason that the PS2 I think is not a 7 is because it basically has the worst version of every multi-platform game.
Fair. All right. Game variety. Guys, you gave it a 7. I gave it a 6. Why, Stefan, are you giving it a 7 on game variety?
Man, I think
it's like ridiculous. It's got so many games.
yeah, there's so many games and just so much and like it hits every category. There's something for everybody on the PS2, literally. Also, like the highs are just so high, so high, and just like so many titles that are just like of that tier of just like bananas great experiences. So good.
Yeah, I think I'm actually wrong, and I'm bumping it up. I thought too much about. Well, it's like, well, there's a lot of survival horror and there's a lot of sports games, but there's a lot of everything on the system. Really, there's a lot of rhythm. It's like
Guitar Man, excellent, chef's kiss.
Yeah,
Mwah.
There's a lot of weird stuff on there. I like niche games. There's a lot of everything. I mean, it's like the biggest catalog of games. Yeah, there's a lot of everything here.
Not that your question was so ridiculous and asking Stefan why a 7 that I laughed, but I mean, even like Western developed games, I think this is something that the PlayStation 1, even though I also gave that a 7, might be lacking in, but like Western RPGs, you got like the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance games and X-Men Legends and things like that. It's fucking crazy.
Well, I think
good.
Like 2D style RPGs of the past, they also moved heavily away from, which we're kind of coming back to that style a little bit. I think they moved too far away from that, so that's a little bit where I was dinging. Like the RPGs, like Dragon Quest 7 you have, but a lot of them moved into like where like Final Fantasy 7 was trying to go, and there was not like a traditional RPG for me really that I wanted to play there.
There's so many RPGs I don't care about on PS2. Are you telling me there's not like a subgenre of stupid Super Nintendo style games?
There's not really, no.
Weird. All right.
Yeah.
I think I was just thinking about this. If I were born in a different time, PS2 would be my favorite console. Like it's just down to me having the feels for the SNES because of when I happened to be born.
I think it's probably the best console. I just kind of have I was really into like graphics and things like that when this was out, so I just didn't play PS2 as much because I'm like, why would I play PS2 when I could play Xbox? It's the better console, you stupid idiots. But looking back, like I think it's the best console ever made, probably.
How did that take age?
How did that take age?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
He just said he was wrong.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, how did that take age? Anyway, Johnny, move us on.
Iconic titles. So here's where I'm way off from you guys. You guys have Tyler 6, Stefan 5. I gave it a 3. Tyler, tell me why you think it's a 6 in iconic titles.
3.
Yeah, 3. Tell me why it's
what
a 6.
What do you want,
Johnny?
You want me to talk about Sly Cooper and Jack and Ratchet and Clank and Akami and Final Fantasy X and Shadow of the Colossus and Silent Hill 2? I know it's on Xbox. I don't care. The Grand Theft Auto series, I know it's multi-platform, but people usually think of the PlayStation games. And God of War and Devil May Cry and Katamari Damacy.
Kingdom Hearts,
Persona, whatever other RPGs I just don't care about because they're RPGs.
Burnout, so
Tekken.
Good. Oh God.
A lot of them are multi-platform, like Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero wasn't multi-platform to begin with. That was just a PS2 game.
Jack and Daxter.
Gran Turismo 4.
Jack and Daxter.
Okay. So I'm going to counter it with that, like, only this. So yes, it's got a lot of major licenses, and I did move mine up from a 3 to a 4, just so we're all because I realized I looked at it, and like the right answer might be 5. I'm still thinking about it. I went low just because I looked at the mascot thing, and I'm like, who are your mascots really for the PS2 for this console, which has one of the greatest libraries of all time.
Yeah,
like
they
its
they
best
never really
games
did
still
land a
aren't-
mascot, did they?
They didn't land a mascot, and they didn't have a franchise. Like they've got a lot of franchises, but the best of the franchise wasn't there to like grow into the next thing. Like what happened there? And I kind of peeked ahead to the PS3 and went, I think I like the PS3 better, and I think there's more mascotty stuff and like more iconic PS3 titles, and was better done on the PS3 than on the PS2. But
Johnny, if you had to pick a
I
PS3
went,
mascot without thinking, what would it be?
the Naughty Dog logo.
For me, it would be Sackboy from Little Big Planet, and then if I thought about it, it might be Nathan Drake. Thinking about it on the PS2, like literally, if you asked me to put a mascot on the PS2, it might be CJ from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, just because
Not Kratos.
not
Like, why wouldn't it be
Kratos.
Kratos.
bet Grand Theft Auto San Andreas sold more than God of War.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, well, I mean, because it's sold on like 25
You're right.
different
It
systems.
should be Kratos.
and it's also, I mean, that game came out incredibly late in the console's life cycle. So,
But-
What? Didn't those
but
both
early
come out
on
in
the-
2005?
Yeah, I mean,
No,
early on the
GTA.
PS5 library though, so that was nice.
All right, move us on. Wrong man
Okay.
about iconic games.
Yeah, I moved it up to a 4.
All
I
right,
can still
all
be
right,
wrong. Okay, value proposition. Can you put your money in? Can you get it out? Long-term value, guys. We're pretty close. 4s and 5s is. You guys are 5s. I'm a 4 because I'm always rating everything lower than everybody.
yeah, look, I think there's just a shitload of potential to grow in everything but like the tippy top of PS2, which is like your horror survival and your pretty much that. So yeah, I think the potential to grow is sort of where this got me, is that it's not, the vast majority of the library is not that expensive right now, and I think it's got legs. It's got legs.
I agree with that. I think a lot of it comes from it being incredibly varied and, in my opinion, the best console of all time. And the only thing that prevents it from being like a 7 is because PS2 games are balls common. So it's got that going against it.
It does have the anti-collector feel for it, and the size of the library works against it for me. But yeah, I think we're all close enough that I don't need to explain myself. Cost of collecting, guys. You guys, Steph and I both have a 5. Tyler, you have a 6. You think it's super cheap, pretty much too. And I said it's a 5, and I'll go with why I'm a 5. And that's mainly just because of the good stuff that, like, if you're a collector and you're going to see the Instagram photo of, and like survival horror.
It's basically
like
Kuon and Rule of Rose.
like if you want to buy those are like pretty expensive. Overall, not like, still, if you average out the price of all the cool games, not very expensive, but it's got a few that you're just gonna feel it in the butt when you buy them. When
Also,
you buy them, bite
Rule
them.
of Rose. Dogs think it's delicious.
Yeah, I like it so much I bought it twice.
Yeah, I think you guys are thinking more of the high end, and I'm more thinking of like, there are a ton of amazing PS2 games you can get for less than $15. And I know it's not maybe the Nintendo Wii in terms of how almost free a lot of games are. And it has gone up in price, but it's still pretty far down there just because of how common games are.
I mean, you're a 6, we're at a 5. We're still saying it's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Like, on the spectrum, cheap. Like, get in. Get some of those PS2 games. Yeah. Extendability, Tyler and I give this a 2. Stefan, you give it a 3. Why do you think what is going on where you think this is a 3? Because I think there's pretty much like nothing to do with the PS2.
Yeah. So again, I've been kind of favoring import libraries. I think there's some really fun stuff on the PS2, but also there were a fair amount of magazine demos for PS2 in the PS2 generation as well, right?
Sure, but I feel like that's the only thing it's got.
Yeah, it is. I guess I just valued those two things higher than you did.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's some standalone demo discs and stuff too. I mean, there's
like magazines
so much,
and demos are all like the same category to me.
There's so many games that there must be a lot more to collect for all of this shit. Like, I almost want to go up to 3 without even knowing what else there is to collect.
But like, even like special editions, there's not that, like, there's some movie ticket stuff in here that you can go get, but there's not that many special editions.
Well, yeah, it was the falling generation that really kind of.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It was just like PlayStation was right at the cusp, but there's not like a lot of special editions of the consoles either. Like, think about all the weird stuff N64 did, like their controllers. PlayStation doesn't have that many colors, or like they've got a couple different models of the system, but pretty
that is interesting too, because
overall.
That is interesting because like, the Xbox, as far like the Xbox did have a shitload of like console variants with all their fucking Mountain Dew and Halo and all that shit.
I mean, not very many, but more than like the PlayStation. Like they're like a rose-colored one. I think there's like a blue one. There's like a white one, but like not.
There's a yellow one.
None of the.
There's a bunch.
There's none of them are exciting or like, oh man, everyone got this one. Not like when you get to the PS3 where you're like, oh yeah, did you get this one? Or the PS4 where you're like, oh man, like you got some really hot
literally
stuff
everyone who wanted PS4 variants were like fucking like comic book variant covers. Like anybody who wanted to make one could.
Yeah, I still want that Spider-Man one. So
I like the R2D2 one. The R2D2 one is cool.
The R2, that's the Xbox.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, Xbox is R2D2, the 360. They have a Darth Vader head one, which is not nice on the PS4. And they also have like the Rebel/Imperial logo merging.
Yeah, that Spider-Man one was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
But the controller was kind of not nice. Like maybe I would have liked a deeper red than like that candy apple. Still pretty cool looking though. With the white spider on it. Batman one, also very good. Anyways.
All right.
We have more to say. Do you guys want to say more about extendability?
I was just gonna point out, it almost doesn't matter because there's so many PS2 games. It's gonna take you years to get them all, right? Like you have everything, Johnny, and you don't have a PS2 set.
That's true.
Does VG Collectaholic have a PS2 set?
I don't know. We'll have to ask him.
Right into the show. All right, move us on.
All right. So cool factor, is the PS2 cool? Guys, you gave it, Stefan, you gave it a 5. I gave it a 4. Stefan gave it a 4. Or Tyler gave it a 4. I changed mine up. I had a 3 and I was like, no, it's cooler than that. I was thinking about some of the stuff. I'm like, no, its games are cool. The hardware isn't cool. Special editions are not really a thing. The controller, it still, I feel, is bad. Just like, it's the PS1 controller that they didn't really do much better. But I still think the system has a certain cachet that is cool about it. And the cases are fine and very consistent.
Okay.
So
I really like the DualShock 2. Sorry. A lot of this my 5 kind of came down to how cool I think the console is actually. Like being able to like swivel the icon to match the orientation of the console, that's fucking bananas. They made like the Slim console a thing. And the PS2 Slim is awesome.
I don't know. Nintendo made minis first.
Did they?
Yeah.
The NES.
NES Mini
Top
and
loader.
Super Nintendo. Yeah, top loader and the Super Nintendo Mini.
Okay. Sure.
Neither of them are super common, though. I mean.
But anyway, yeah. So like I think the console itself is extra cool. I think those fucking cubes in the startup sequence will be forever burned into my brain. I think the styling of it is great. I think the uniformity of the boxes is nice. And they're DVD cases, so they're pretty fucking resilient, which is nice. I think I'm happy with my 5.
Here's the thing where I'm going to impugn it a little bit. Hardware issues. You talked about the Slim. The Slim was a necessary hardware change because of the failure rate of the original PlayStation 2. But we don't talk about it, but like that disc, the disc laser on that thing failed a lot, and so did the motor to drive it because it was a mechanical, loading disc. And the Slim cut it down and like just took out a point of failure. And I think about, as someone who like rates quality stuff a lot, I look at the failures of that, and I know that I personally had to buy 3 PS2s in my lifetime of owning PS2s and was not happy about that. So I'm dinging it there.
This is speaking to quality, just because I have kind of a unique POV on this. So this was the generation in which I started in the game industry. And so I used a lot of PS2s. And the failure rate was pretty high even on the test kits because, we were running them practically 24 hours a day. And like one of the more interesting things that would happen would be the laser would get misaligned and start to physically cut the discs. That was a big failure point for the test PS2s. And also PS2 by far was, as far as, because as you might imagine, we were like throwing controllers out on the weekly basis because of how much use they were getting at a certain point. And the PS2 controllers also failed way more than the Xbox or the GameCube at the time.
All right. So that brings us to our totals. Good point, Stefan. It got 104 points, so 104. It ranked very well. I gave it a 32, being the lowest. I like it the least. Tyler and Stefan, you got it exactly the same at 36, which is a very high score. So, Stefan, that is your third highest rated system. So you have
good stuff.
Tyler, it is it's your fourth. As much as you talking about it being the greatest system, you didn't rate it higher than your fourth best system here.
I think I ding it a little for being it's really common and really easy to find games in pretty nice shape. So the collectability, I think, is diminished from just that. And that's a lot of where my tilt came from, too.
Yeah. Which you still gave it more points than I gave the Super Nintendo, just so we're all clear on what happened here. But to be fair,
understand.
Glad I came back to witness this.
I don't I need to go fix the score, but I don't because it affects the overall rankings now, so I don't want to tick anything up. Okay, so we talked about all these games, and I know there's a lot of talkie about ranks. So let's give you the TLDR. Hey, if we were going to tell you what we thought after rating everything, the best systems. Number 1, NES got 111 points, and that was rated the best by Tyler. The SNES rated, Tyler gave a 39, or Stefan gave the SNES a 39. That's second place.
Johnny, restart the what you just said made no sense.
Okay, thank you. All right, so going back and now looking at the TLDR, looking at what systems did the best and who gave it the best points. The NES, that's our top ranked system with 111 points. Who gave it the highest score? That was Tyler with 38. The SNES got 110 points. And that's why I didn't want to change my score, because if I would have, then I feel like it affects the SNES rating and makes it a tie. And I didn't want that. But Stefan gave it the most with 39.
Because I love it the most, to be clear.
The PS1 got 106. So SNES and NES, very close. Not far behind, though, is the PS1 at 106. So that's our third place system. And who's giving it the best score? Tyler. Better than the PS2. So Tyler's being very generous in his score. PS2, 104, very close to the PS1 and very close to the top. So there's our top 4. And then the disparity after this becomes a much bigger leap. PS2 rated highest by Tyler and Stefan, both with 36. Now we get to the Genesis being the 5th system out of 8, 5 out of 8 for us with a 90. So yeah, what happened there, guys? I thought the Genesis was amazing. Why did Stefan give it a 34? It should have got an 85, I think. But Stefan is keeping it afloat with the 34. Atari got a 75. Now, did anybody expect the Atari to be not last place? Because I thought it was going to be last place.
I thought for sure the N64 was going to be last place.
I thought Sega Saturn was going to be last, honestly.
Okay. So, anyways, the Atari got a 75. Tyler, again, giving the most points. Tyler, 7 points higher than Stefan. I think that's the biggest divergence in any one rater to another.
Yep.
Well, no, that also in the Genesis, me and Stefan feeling that much different about it. So 7-point swing, pretty big. And now we go into the N64 with 66 points, second to last place. Man, we all rated that pretty closely, but somehow, and this is a triumph for me, who's famously said it's a garbage system for garbage people, rated it the highest at 23 points.
Johnny loves the N64.
To be fair, that is my second lowest score that I gave any console, and is only 1 point higher than Stefan and 2 points, or 1 point higher than Tyler and 2 points higher than Stefan. But somehow I thought it was the best. And Tyler, 2 of his favorite games are on it. I don't know what the fuck happened. There's a mistake. Mistakes were made. I apologize to everyone who's ever listened to me talk about the Super Nintendo and the N64. I've been wrong. The Sega Saturn coming in last place. Again, another thing I don't understand, because I like the Saturn a whole lot, but when we're putting it to kind of me trying to be objective here, we got a 61. So in last place by quite a bit. And I came in with the 32, and Stefan and Tyler, I came in with a 20, and Tyler being the lowest. Sorry, Tyler the lowest with 18, me with a 20, and Stefan with a 23. So the highest score it got was very low. So to be clear, Stefan likes the Saturn as much as I like the N64.
That's definitely how these statistics work.
Yeah. No, I mean, these aren't good scores in general. Like, if you want to look, my N64 score is a 36 or 35, and N64 is a 23. So there's a big disparity in how I feel about those.
All right. I'm concerned we're throwing out too many numbers, Johnny. Do we have any more takeaways from our amazing objective analysis?
No, that's it. So I can put this out there for you guys if you need to see. I know it's talking if you want to like listen to it and read through this and see what our criteria were again. I know we talked about them a lot, but I can put them out there. Yeah, a lot of numbers were thrown at you. Anyways, top 10 again. NES, SNES, PS1, PS2, Genesis, Atari, N64, and Saturn being the worst. That's it. Thanks for listening to what a numbery episode that had to be. Whew.
This is definitely
now for the
least
second
favorite
half
episode.
of our show. So this is going to be a 6-hour podcast.
Now, do we want to cut it and do we want to not do a question since we're already at like 3 hours?
Fine, we'll cut the question.
Cut the question. Okay, I have one thing for you then. No question this week, but I will give you a would you rather own. So this is a new thing we started doing question we started doing, Stefan. If you have to pick one, which is the cooler thing to own? Earthbound complete in box with a nice strategy guide or Maximum Carnage QVC?
Both of them Super Nintendo?
Both of them Super Nintendo.
Still Earthbound.
Tyler?
Johnny, why is Chase the Chuck Wagon written in the episode document? Were you going to ask about Earthbound versus Chase the Chuck Wagon?
No, I wasn't. It was a MacGuffin.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to pick Earthbound. It's a Nintendo exclusive and it's a much cooler game in everyone's opinion. So I'm going to go
even though Maximum Carnage is rare and it's got the whole Spider-Man appeal and everything.
But Spider-Man doesn't appeal to me because I'm a DC Comics guy, so I just don't care. And I think that box is garbage, and the Earthbound box is pretty chunky and cool. So I'm still going Earthbound.
If I also collected comics, then maybe the QVC edition, because listeners may not know, the hardbound book that comes with that QVC release is exclusive to that QVC release. So if you want that particular hardbound copy of Maximum Carnage, the comics, you have to buy that QVC.
And I'll have you know, another fun fact, those pins are exclusive. So if you collect pins, the only way... No,
if you collect pins, stop.
Yeah. Don't do it. All right. That was it. That's the which would you rather collect or own? Anyways, that's a fun little thing we started doing. I try to think of an example of two things I think are similar. Earthbound, Maximum Carnage, big boxes with a book included. That was my comparison.
Got it.
Okay.
Cool.
Guys, buying? What, did you buy anything? Tyler? Stefan?
Sure. Last thing I bought is just because it's cool and new. I found the original art for the JVC cover of X-Men for the NES. It is the original art, sorta. So in that the line art was just like marketing. Like prefab artwork in the Marvel archives. You know, this is because it's the back in the day when basically they were just an advertising agency. So it's like a cobbled together mess of some prefab artwork. So the line work on the art was done through a photostat machine, which is similar to a photocopy machine. But the colors are original, and so it's like the line work is not original, and yet it's still quote unquote the thing that was used to make the cover for the NES game. That was my coolest pickup, and in the interest of time, that's all I'll talk about this week.
Nice.
Neat.
Okay, Tyler.
This is a rare week, Johnny, where I think I've both bought nothing and played nothing. I've been
What?
Yeah, no, I've been researching and upgrading my backpack gear for some trips with friends. So that's all I've been doing.
I've been buying Lego stuff, so not a whole lot. I did get one cool item, and did I talk about it last time that it was coming? I got this Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for PS1, but it's sealed, but it's from the EA store. So the EA store put a little sticker over the PS1 case, over the seal and everything, and it says, do not, or EA store only on it. So it's pretty cool. And you would only find this variant if someone who bought it from the EA store kept it sealed. So it's like really the only way you'll see it. It says a purchased product purchased from the EA store on it. So pretty cool. Weird variant.
I've got whatever the original Xbox rugby game is. I've got an EA store sticker on that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's like, is it same gold, like a gold foil sticker?
I don't think so, but also it probably came out 10 years after your game, so. Stickers probably changed over time, except for the Microsoft Store sticker one. You could find that going back to like flight simulators from mid 2000s.
Those were like on the boxes though. So this one is interesting because it's on the seal. So the minute you open it, the sticker goes away forever.
Yeah, super dumb. They didn't think that one through, or the employee messed up.
Yeah. Either way, pretty cool that it's there and it exists. I've never seen another one with that sticker on it. Granted, I don't look at a lot of sealed PS1 stuff, so maybe you got some you can show me. That's it. I played some Lego Star Wars. That's all I've done. Okay, that's it for the episode. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Where can we find you? Stefan?
Yeah, sure. Just Google Art of Nintendo Power. That's the easiest way to find me. You'll find all my things that way. I will say we are doing a show at the Game On Expo in August in Phoenix, Arizona. And I will be setting up at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in October, right? So keep me honest.
October.
Yeah. So I will be there as well. Also, I think there's Megabit, I think is in September again. It's just this little one-day convention in Simi Valley, California, where Johnny and I live. So that one's easy. So I'll set up there too, because I like them, and I like supporting local people. So so those are the three conventions that I will be at for the rest of the year if you would like to see the Art of Nintendo Power Museum exhibit in person.
I just have something to question. One, Portland, remember how they were going to move that to the summer? And then instead, you have an expo in Phoenix in August, which sounds like hell. Why would I want to be in Phoenix? Like, hey there, Phoenix Game On Expo, move yours into the fall when it's not 1,000,000 degrees. And then, hey, Portland, you have nice weather in the summer. Why don't you move yours to the summer?
Yeah. Has it ever not been raining when we go to Portland?
No, it always. I think that's what happens in the Pacific Northwest. But, like, guys, like, I don't want to go to a convention it's not like Vegas where you're just like, I can always just be inside. That's not Phoenix, man. Gross. Please don't put me in the heat. I already live in someplace hot and I still don't want to go to Phoenix. Anyways, that's it. Tyler, where are we finding you now? Anywhere? Do you go places?
On the Instagram, the video game sage, or just message me on Discord. Oh, I'm Default Gen, Default GEN.
And
just find me. You'll
have to go to those places and then guess.
Yeah. Just type in Tyler and you'll find me. I mean, type in Johnny on Video Game Sage, you will just find me. Anyways, you can find me on Instagram at Johnny_Iuchi, and you can find me on our Discord. And you can get to our Discord by becoming a patron for as little as $2 or as much as $6. But $4 is the sweet spot where you get the bonus content. Anyways, the Discord is the best part, and I hope you guys join because we have great conversations and great people there. And that's at patreon.com/collectorsquest. Thanks so much for listening. That's the episode. Sorry for all the numbers. Bye!
That is our show. As always, no errata. All our opinions are 100% correct. Thank you to Apebit, apebit.bandcamp.com. He does our intro music. And thank you to the patrons. Richard, patron number 1 Bowden, Canadian variant alert, Chris Glidden, Nintendo World Champion Daniel Jacksvik, High-End Collector Andrew Brim, Greetings Stranger, I'm not surprised to see Andrew Shelton around here, 50 Hertz is good enough for me, Andre, Video Games Were Meant to Be Slabbed, Brandon Ackley, Brian Gupta, Pocky and Rocky with Becky, Mint Condition, Brian J. Mora, The Strictly Limited Super Rare Bruno, Fat Cat Collector Chris Jackson, Chris SNK, Too Many NES Accessories, Morozek, Johnny's GBA Hookup, Coffee with Mr. Saturn, Playing with Power, Connor Strange, The Last Game You Need for the Set, Corey O'Brien, Unpunched Hang Tab, Dustin Beagle, He Has Returned to Judge This City, Eric Addison, Man of Nintendo in the World of Nintendo, Funky Brewsta, Another Vinyl Collector, Grizzly X Bear, The Actual Shinobi, Jasonic the Kid, I'm sorry for shitting on Shinobi 3 this episode, Red Pyramid Thing, Jonathan Shados, Joseph Garris, he's just out here. What is it? He's just out here having a good time, achieving his goals. Proud of you. Nintendo Tape Archivist Joseph Leo, Lance, Lord Hardstyle Z, The Degenerate, Matt Fall, Mr. CIB, get your loose Genesis carts out of here! Funkoland Employee Platform Agnostic, Red the Game Shark. The Famicom Box Retro Game Enthusiast, they could be Ghosts and Goblins twice, Chefish. Sean, the Gamer Collective, the New Craft, who could beat Mega Man without the pause trick. Previously unknown variant Tim Walker, from the internet Todd Fisher, Can't Put Limits on Collecting, VG Collectaholic, The Millennium, Will Joe, Keeper of the Zelda variant, 0x Def Code, previous game collector Adam Kavanaugh. I want to make sure I'm getting this right, but Adam, I'm pretty sure you just popped in our Discord and you're like, hey, I don't collect video games, I collect records. But 10 or 15 years ago, Adam collected video games. He just likes knowing about weird stuff that we talk about, and I am so there with him because I listen to Stamp and comic YouTube videos all the time, even though I don't collect those. Getting the full PS2 set because Stefan won't. All caps! No gods or kings, only Andy Lancaster. What a 9.8 A++ Benji, the actually rare Bird Dog Gaming, dropping the Mario 64 Penguin off the mat, Brandon Chalker, Brandon Rogers, whose favorite episode is the wrestling episode, Christopher Piper, still shaking from what he found at Goodwill, still finding deals in 2022, Colton Murphy, a winner is him, David Green, Derek Lauer, who made me edit this show, I know it's late, Don Libby, the hero of time, Double Ugly presents Double Ugly, the official game of the movie. Actually understands the Zelda timeline, Jeff Pierce, Jeff the Game Boy Farris, he is Error, Jeff Russell, Jeremy Jarvis, here for the Pog Talk, Joe actually plays his games Champ Pity, video game art collector because video games are art, Justin Chichio, Lateral Movement, who's got a Donkey Kong kill screen coming up, Michael posting in the Discord right now, Chiaramonte, Nancy Hollenbach, Pro Skater, Nick the Video Game Database Morgan, Homebrew Mastermind Divertov, the other guy who collects Korean releases, Peaceful Games, Dungeon Master Reed Stubenik, The Promoter, Retro RPG Podcast, Tom Obscure Variant Chaser Chase, Zaventorian, he knows all 97 Nintendo games, 32 bits or less, do the math! Andrew actually collecting N-Gage O, Ben Parker, a bad enough dude to rescue the president, Chesno, all your base are belong to him, Colby, he is Sinistar, Corhagen does what Nintendo don't, Daniel McArdle, who thought this was the Retronauts Patreon, the Modern Database, Danny Gomez, the Philatelist, Dork Overlord, my childhood PlayStation idol, Game-Rave.com. He's proud of us for rating PS1 so highly this episode. PS1's such a good console to collect, guys. Joseph Rogers got 50,000 on Double Dragon, collector of everything, including Atari. Kalen McAteer, sorry about not rating Atari higher. Video game console modding guy, MP3, Noah, Nintendogs, Chicanti, Sam, Sega Mark III, Marks, Sean, the video game Illuminati LaCroix, and Hedgemon of the Geek Empire, Vaildor the Great. Thank you guys so much.